Chapter 1637. In the market, the exchange ratio between Yang dollars and silver had already reached a point that people could only look up to. Moreover, there was still a demand but no supply. Therefore, as long as one was willing to exchange Yang dollars, one would get a lot of silver and not have to worry about living. Usually, Yang Qindong would pretend that he didn't see it. After all, who didn't encounter an emergency? However, now that the Southern Ming observation group had arrived, the exchange business had to be stopped. At least, this level was not allowed to exist. This way, he didn't have to worry about the Southern Ming officials being able to satisfy his requests and wishes. With Yang Qindong's instructions, Yang Wu accepted the order and left. However, he knew that the exchange business would be over before tonight. After all, this was an order personally given by Bugnam of Gojoseon. Once violated, even if there were a few heads, it wouldn't be enough to chop off. Even so, who would take the initiative to seek death? The Southern Ming officials didn't know that by the time they realized the importance of Yang dollars, everything was already too late. Just like when Jing, a fellow member of the Brocade Guard who came with the observation group, after learning about Yang Bai, he immediately arranged for a fast boat to leave Qiqian City and go straight to the capital of the Southern Ming dynasty. He had long heard that there were many good things in the Yang family's department store, and that Yang Bai was not the only one who could buy them. In the past, he didn't have it. Now that he had to gather it and buy the things that he couldn't afford in the past. Unfortunately, by the time he got Zhu Qijian's imperial edict, everything would be too late. The next morning, whether it was the officials or their family members, after a hurried breakfast, they left the Yang family Grand Hotel and went straight to the place they had set their sights on. Chun Sun went to the city lord's residence. When Chun Sun and a group of Southern Ming officials successfully entered the city lord's residence with the application form, they saw the orderly scene of Yang Xie's staff running back and forth in the building. Unlike the Southern Ming court, the officials here walked with the wind. Many times, their footsteps were hurried or jogged. They all looked very busy. Compared to the Southern Ming officials who walked with steady steps, it was completely different. This way, you can train your body and also improve your work efficiency. After all, Yang Xie has dozens of provinces and regions under his control. There are many things that he has to deal with every day. The person in charge of accompanying them was an official sent by the city lord mansion. After seeing everyone's puzzled expression, he explained, "I see." Chen Sun and the others nodded. They actually wanted to be busy, but they only had the Southern Ming kingdom. Moreover, after losing Yunnan, Guizhou, and Guangxi, the area under their control was even smaller. They were no longer as busy as before. Even if they wanted to be busy, they couldn't, because it was said before that everyone could look at the city lord's mansion, but they could not disturb the normal work here. So Chun Sun and the others had to walk together and not be separated. Otherwise, the city lord's mansion would send a large number of officials to explain and accompany them, which in itself was not a small amount of pressure. Fortunately, this request was acceptable to everyone. In fact, they were already very satisfied to be able to come in and take a look. Who would ask for more? What's that? Chen Sun, who was walking in the crowd, noticed that a black thing suddenly rang. Then he saw someone walk forward to pick it up and say something, but there was clearly nothing in front of that person. There was only a wall. Who was he talking to? Not only Chen Sun, but some of the Southern Ming Kingdom's officials also noticed it, but they didn't dare to ask casually because of their low status. Now that the minister took the lead, the others naturally became interested. Oh, that's a telephone. Every telephone has its own number and corresponds to a department. If you need to find someone, you don't have to go far to the city lord's mansion. You just need to call this number and say who you are looking for. The accompanying official said proudly, then looked at the southern Ming kingdom's officials with a trace of disdain. He was clearly saying that they were a group of bumpkins. In fact, more than a month ago, when the telephone was first set up, his reaction was not much better than these southern Ming kingdom's officials after learning about its function. He was also dumbfounded. So powerful? Can this old man give it a try? Chun Sun's face was full of surprise, but there was a trace of disbelief in his words. Of course you can, as long as no one is using the telephone. The accompanying official smiled at Chun Sun. He probably also knew that this person was the Minister of Personnel of the Southern Ming Kingdom, and was also a high-ranking official. Perhaps after the Yangtze annexed the Southern Ming Kingdom, everyone would be colleagues. The other party might even be his superior, so his attitude was quite good. At this time, the person who answered the phone put down the phone and walked out of the office. It was obvious that he had something to do or convey. Looking at the empty black phone, Chun Sun was eager to give it a try. Chun Sun, no one is using it right now. You can give it a try, the accompanying official said with an encouraging tone. Then I'll give it a try. Chun Sun straightened his body and walked straight to the telephone, as if he had made a decision. Behind him and beside him were a group of Southern Ming Kingdom's officials. Obviously, everyone was very interested. Under everyone's expectant gaze, Chun Sun came in front of the black telephone and reached out with his trembling hand to pick up the phone. However, he quickly put it down again. When everyone was confused, Chun Sun asked a question that made everyone burst out laughing. How do I use this thing? Cough. The accompanying official forcefully suppressed his laughter and quickly explained. Chun Sun, shake it first, then pick up the phone, and just say who you are looking for. Of course, the prerequisite is that you know which department the other party is from. Oh, okay, then I'll look for you Gong. He's the city lord of the city lord mansion, right? When he thought of Yu Qian's self-introduction, Chun Sun had a target. He reached out to the telephone again and picked it up first. Then he shook the black telephone. When he felt the voice coming from the other side, he opened his mouth and said, I'm looking for City Lord Yu Qian. Okay, please wait a moment. The person who answered the phone hesitated for a moment. After all, Yu Qian was very busy with work, and not just anyone could find him. However, when he saw that the call was from the City Lord Mansion, he didn't think much of it. Immediately, a pleasant and polite female voice sounded. Okay, please wait a moment. Then, there was a beeping sound from the phone. After about 2 breaths, there was another beeping sound. Just when Chun Sun was about to question whether the phone could be used, Yu Qian's authoritative voice came from the other side. Hello, I'm Yu Qian. Who are you? Chun Sun was very familiar with Yu Qian's voice. Therefore, when he heard the voice, he was sure that he had found the right person. However, he was also shocked and didn't know what to say for a moment. Obviously, when the call went through, he was shocked. Hello, who are you? I'm Yu Qian. Why are you looking for me? Yu Qian's energetic voice came from the other side of the phone again, because the phone had been moved away from Chun Sun's ear. The voice that came from the other side of the phone could be heard clearly even by the people outside. After recognizing that it was indeed Yu Qian's voice, everyone had a look of amazement on their faces. With Yu Qian's continuous questioning, Chun Sun finally woke up. He quickly put the phone to his ear and said, Sir Yu, I'm Chun Sun. Oh, Sir Chun. After a slight hesitation, Yu Qian's laughter came out. Obviously, he had already guessed the purpose of the other party's call. Obviously, he didn't believe in the function of this phone and wanted to try it himself. After laughing, Yu Qian didn't say too much. He only said that he would go to the hotel to chat with Chun Sun after work today. Then he put down the phone. The beeping sound was already heard from the phone. Chun Sun reluctantly put it down, then shook his head and said with a sigh, This thing is really good. Chapter 1638. After entering the military camp on a flat ground, a group of 5-star soldiers wearing vests were undergoing training for a 500-meter special obstacle course. Although it was already November, because of the unique climate of Crimson City, it was still very warm. Especially under the training, the soldiers were sweating a lot, so they were wearing very cool clothes. What a disgrace! Huang Yi said angrily when he saw the soldiers' attire. The Southern Ming dynasty's army was very strict about appearance. Even during training, they paid attention to the attire because it represented the face of the country. Since when did they dress so casually like the 5-star army? Although this simple attire could allow the body to relax, the generals didn't dare to do this during training. If anyone dared to do this, they would be impeached by the civil officials and be heavily punished. This was the fundamental difference between two different systems. Huang Yi said angrily. Clearly, his education didn't allow soldiers to do this. However, this was the 5-star army's barracks, so he couldn't question it. On the other hand, Ku Hong and the others behind him were deep in thought. Ku Hong had led soldiers before, and at the highest level, he was a vice Qianhu. Therefore, he was very clear about what the soldiers needed, not to mention the difference between the 5-star army's training and theirs. Just this casual training was enough to make people envious. As the saying goes, every field has its own specialization. Soldiers should train in the most relaxed environment and not be limited by their attire, which would affect the results of the training. Of course, this was only what he thought. Without orders, no one dared to do this. Therefore, Ku Hong was a bit envious of the soldiers who were training. The 500-meter obstacle course. It trained a person's stamina, endurance, agility, strength, and coordination. Later generations had already proven that this was a very scientific training method. And now, the soldiers who were at the lowest level had to go through this kind of basic training if they wanted to become a soldier of the 5-star army. It was also through this kind of training that the soldiers' bodies were greatly strengthened. On the battlefield, not only could they kill more enemies, but they could also protect their own safety. On both sides of the training ground, there were 2 temporary shelters. In each shelter, there were 2 military doctors wearing white coats. Beside them, there was a large water jug with drinks that could relieve the heat. This was to ensure that the soldiers could quickly replenish themselves when they were short of water. Not far away, there were specialized examiners. They were holding pen and paper to record the soldiers' performance. This was to ensure that the outstanding people would be promoted, the qualified people would stay, and the unqualified people would be kicked out. In order to improve the military quality of the soldiers, target practice was only a form of training. It was to allow the soldiers to reduce casualties on the battlefield and kill more enemies. How could there be a waste of gunpowder? However, when they saw that the person asking the question was from the Southern Ming Empire's observation team, they immediately understood that it was a country bumpkin asking questions. Right now, in the eyes of the Yangtze staff, the Southern Ming Empire was a country bumpkin. Not long ago, the great Ming Empire's high and mighty aura no longer existed. In other words, they were looking down on the great Ming Empire. Just like in history, when China was lagging behind, they were looked down upon by others. This was especially so for the Westerners. Backwardness and poverty were synonymous with China. They had already forgotten that when we built cities with millions of people in Bianliang and Hangzhou, the largest city in Europe, Venice, only had a population of 100,000. Moreover, whether it was the nobles or the commoners, they all urinated and defecated on the streets. Their civilization was far behind ours. However, reality was reality. If you were lagging behind, you would be beaten up. This was an absolute truth. If you were lagging behind, you would be looked down upon. Fortunately, due to the previous discipline, the Southern Ming Empire's officials could still maintain a humble attitude on the surface. Therefore, The recording personnel replied with a good attitude, "It won't be a waste. If you don't train your marksmanship well, how can you kill enemies on the battlefield?" Ku Hong, who had clearly seen himself as a part of the enemy, had an unsightly expression on his face. In the end, he could only awkwardly smile and retreat. Then he sent the same words back to Kuang Yi. At this moment, his expression became even darker. After leaving the shooting range, they went to the army headquarters a few kilometers away. There, they saw a scene that they would never forget. In a meeting room that was thousands of square meters, a huge sand table stood there. On it was a three-dimensional map of the southern Ming Empire. On the sand table, the rivers, lakes, mountains, roads, cities, and cities of the southern Ming Empire were displayed one by one. It was as if a three-dimensional map of the southern Ming Empire was presented in front of everyone. After seeing the sand table, Kuang Yi finally couldn't hold it in anymore. He impulsively strode forward, as if he wanted to flip the sand table over. Two young staff officers had been paying attention to Kuang Yi for a long time. They immediately went forward to stop him and forcefully pushed him to the side. This also caused Ku Hong and the others to become restless. They shouted and went straight to Kuang Yi. However, the commotion had already attracted the attention of the soldiers who were in charge of guarding outside the door. A squad of soldiers rushed out and pointed their guns at Ku Hong and the others. They had no choice but to stop moving forward. The pitch-black muzzles were aimed at the hundreds of people in the southern Ming Empire's observation group. It was clear that if anyone dared to make a move, they would shoot to death. Ku Hong and the others stood rooted to the ground. Layers of cold sweat appeared on their heads. They didn't doubt that the other party would dare to shoot. After all, this was the Yangtze's army headquarters. It was equivalent to the Southern Ming Empire's Ministry of War. If anyone wanted to cause trouble here, they would have to pay extremely serious consequences. Everyone didn't dare to move. Someone had already reported what happened here. Soon, Deputy Commander-in-Chief Lung Song led a group of officers into the war room. He already knew what had happened on the way here. He also found an opportunity to call Yang Qindong to ask for instructions. After receiving an answer, he entered with full confidence. As soon as Lung Song entered the war room, Kuang Yi shouted loudly as if he had seen his savior. I protest that you treat the Southern Ming Empire as an imaginary enemy. You must remove this sand table model and apologize to us immediately." Kuang Yi had met Lung Song at the welcome banquet. The two of them even chatted for a while. At that time, Kuang Ye's mentality was still relatively relaxed. He even seemed a little arrogant. On the other hand, Lung Song's attitude was very humble. Most of the time, it was Kuang Yi talking while he listened. This created an illusion that Lung Song was Kuang Ye's subordinate. How could he have known that Lung Song would have such an attitude? It was only because he respected Kuang Yi as a senior. In addition, he also knew that the sixth young master and Sir Kuang had a good personal relationship in the past. That was why he kept enduring. However, this didn't mean that Lung Song was really afraid. Especially after he had already called Yang Qindong to ask for instructions, he was even more confident. Chapter 1639. Imaginary enemy? Kuang Gong, since you said so yourself, why did you do something so inappropriate? As the saying goes, if you don't do anything wrong, don't be afraid of ghosts calling at night. Could it be that you want to be enemies with our 5-star army, so you're afraid that we'll be enemies with you? Let me tell you, your actions have already violated your status as a member of the observer group. You're too reckless, and you'll have to pay the price for it. Men chase Kuang Gong and all of the South Ming Ministry of War officials out. The Navy has already arranged a transport ship, and they must leave Crimson City today. After saying this in an unquestionable manner, a group of officers immediately began to carry it out. Because not all of the Ministry of War officials and their families were here, they had to search for them. Then, they would be kicked out of Crimson City. Kwang Yi clearly didn't expect that he would end up with such a result after making a ruckus. At this moment, his expression changed greatly, and he shouted, "No, you can't not do this. It's too unfair. I want to see Yang Chendong. I want to see Bagnam of Gojoseon. Our king doesn't have time to see you. Also, have you forgotten the bet from before? Let me tell you, there are no civilians in Crimson City who can't afford to eat, because there are countless jobs waiting for them. Therefore, you lost, and with your actions today, there's no other choice but to leave. All right, do it." Lung Song didn't have any intention to continue talking with Kwang Yi after saying this. He turned and left, leaving behind a few officers to deal with this sudden situation. Regardless of whether he was willing or not, Kwang Yi was dragged out of the camp in the end. Ku Hong and the others also followed behind. All of them had ugly expressions. None of them had expected that they would be sent back after only 3 days. How shameful would that be? Everything was because of their minister's impulsive actions. However, they couldn't do anything. The situation was stronger than the person. If they dared to make a move against the 5-star army, it was equivalent to a challenge, and they were seeking their own deaths. No one could save them. They didn't dare to get angry at Kwang Yi. He was their superior, and his words determined their future. Anger that couldn't be vented was the scariest. Until they boarded the ship, no one said a word, but everyone's face was filled with anger, and they were in a bad mood. Especially soon, the family members of the officials from the Ministry of War were also found and sent to the ships. They didn't care so much, especially some of the young people. They were happily strolling around Crimson City. Some of them were even strolling around Yang family's department store, wanting to buy something they liked. Suddenly, many soldiers from the 5-star army rushed out and brought them here. They were still confused about what had happened. Now that they finally knew the truth, how could they not be furious? In their anger, they didn't care about Kwang Yi's status as a high-ranking official. They all started shouting on the ship. Although they didn't directly name Kwang Yi, their words were full of criticism. Do they want to die? When Ku Hong and the others heard this, they were all filled with righteous indignation. They rolled up their sleeves and wanted to find trouble with those young people. They couldn't do anything to the 5-star army, but they could still take care of their own juniors. Forget it, let them vent their anger. At this time, Kwang Yi had already calmed down and shook his head. He was already regretting his impulsive actions. But now that things had come to this, there was no other way. Even if he was willing to bend down and apologize, the 5-star army wouldn't accept it. Not to mention, it was impossible for him to apologize to the 5-star army, because in Kwang Yi's eyes, Yang Chendong was already a traitor. He was the imperial tutor of the crown prince, the minister of war, and a rank 1 official. How could he lower his head to a traitor? When Ku Hong and the others heard Kwang Yi say that they could vent their anger, they couldn't help but look at Kwang Yi. Of course, they hoped that this was true. If that was the case, they would each give their own minister of war a punch to vent their anger. But how could they dare to do that? They wanted to go back just like that. They originally had more time to understand the situation of the 5-star army, but now everything was gone. A good opportunity to understand their opponent was lost just like that. Everyone's morale was low, and they all leaned against the ship with their heads lowered. It was worth mentioning that this time, the transport ship wasn't the luxurious one from before. It was just an ordinary ship. Yang Xie's explanation was that the incident happened too suddenly, and there wasn't enough time to deploy the ship, so they just had to make do. There wasn't even a single room for them to rest in. Everyone was squeezed in the cabin, and after a long time, there were all kinds of smells. It would be strange if they felt good. But what could they do? This was all Kwang Ye's own fault, so he couldn't blame anyone else. The news that Kwang Yi and all the officials and family members of the Ministry of War were sent away quickly spread throughout the observer group. Regardless of whether it was the officials or their family members, they all rushed back to the Yang family hotel as soon as they heard the news. Then, after a few discussions, the ministers began to restrain the people accompanying them, telling them to pay attention to their attitude and actions. This wasn't the Southern Ming dynasty, but Crimson City. They were only a few guests, and if something went wrong, they might even become criminals. For everyone's safety, everyone had to exercise restraint. Yes, before she came to Crimson City, she still felt that the Southern Ming dynasty was very powerful. No matter how strong the Bugnam of Gojoseon and the five-star army were, they still wouldn't be a match for the Southern Ming dynasty. But now, her mentality had long been shaken. In Wang Shang's eyes, Crimson City was heaven on earth. Compared to it, the capital of the Southern Ming dynasty was a backwater and poor place. She couldn't help but yearn for life in Crimson City. She was already fantasizing about whether she could stay here. If that was the case, how great would that be? Wang Shang and Wang Zhiqing weren't the only ones whose mentality had changed. Many others had similar thoughts. And this was only the third day since they came to Crimson City. To be precise, it was only the second day after they truly understood Crimson City. Kwang Ye's incident reminded everyone. In the following days, the observation team members were much more well-behaved when they walked around Crimson City. After all, with such good conditions, no one was willing to leave immediately. Thus, they couldn't do anything stupid. Kwang Yi and the others didn't even understand the deployment of the Five-Star Army's forces. They also didn't know how many soldiers the Five-Star Army had before they were chased away. But who could be blamed for this? As the saying goes, the evils brought on by oneself are the hardest to bear. With this as an example, the Southern Ming observation team became even more well-behaved. They didn't do anything that crossed the line. But even so, the scenes they saw made them widen their eyes in disbelief. The scenes made them feel as if they were in a dream. The spacious cement roads in the city, the neat streets, the lush green trees, the rosy-cheeked people, and the high-spirited new army were all things that he didn't even dare to dream about. Chapter 1640. Everyone had something to do and money to earn. Children didn't care about their birth. As long as one of their parents was Han, they could receive a good education from a young age. When people fell ill, they had money to treat them. The greatest guarantee was the possibility of dying from illness. One day, they had 3 meals instead of 2. Not only that, they could eat meat for every meal. Everyone had new clothes to wear. This seemed to be something that only humans dreamed of in the immortal world. But now, everything was happening in Crimson City. Those bright windows were something that even the Great Ming Imperial Palace didn't have the money to install. But here, it was extremely common. There were also towel factories, flour factories, soy sauce factories, monosodium glutamate factories, mosquito repellent incense factories, textile factories, cigarette factories, pharmaceutical factories, paper factories, ceramics factories, steel factories, power plants, bullet factories, chemical factories, power plants, munitions factories, furniture factories, garment factories, cement factories, glass factories, and so on. Wherever he went, he was shocked, and it was the kind of shock that went straight to the bottom of his heart. He really didn't know that the world could be so beautiful until he arrived in Crimson City. The Southern Ming Empire's observation team was still in Crimson City. Everything that happened here overturned their previous understanding. In the capital of Southern Ming, Kwang Yi had already returned with the officials of the Ministry of War and close to 2,000 people. As soon as he entered the city, a eunuch came to pass a decree that the emperor wanted to see Kuang Yi. After tidying up his clothes, the travel-worn Kuang Yi entered the imperial palace and knelt in front of Zhu Qizhen. The great Ming Empire was very empathetic towards its officials. They didn't have to kneel when they saw the emperor. But this time, Kuang Yi felt that he had done something wrong. This kneel represented his intention to ask for forgiveness. "Grand Tutor, why are you here? Please rise." Zhu Qizhen was an emperor who knew how to act. At this moment, the concern he expressed made Kuang Yi feel very moved. This time, he wanted to kneel even more and not get up. "Your Majesty, this subject is incompetent and has failed to live up to your trust. I was thrown out by that bastard Wu Nanwang." Abruptly, he kowtowed to the ground, and his forehead came into close contact with the ground. "Quickly help the Grand Tutor up." When Zhu Qizhen saw that Kuang Ye's forehead was starting to redden, he hurriedly shouted. Soon after, the head eunuch Qian Seng Bao stepped forward and helped Kuang Yi up. Kuang Yi stood up with tears in his eyes. No one knew how much pressure he had endured on the way back. Almost everyone was blaming him. In the beginning, Ku Hong and the others would still speak up for him, but later on, these people were too lazy to speak up for him. So everyone vented their anger on him. If it weren't for the fact that the embroidered uniform guards were with him, he might have been thrown off the boat and thrown into the sea to feed the fish. His actions made his opponent, Bugnam of Gojoseon, Yang Qindong, unhappy, but he accepted it. But now, even his own people didn't like him. This was really intolerable to him, causing him to have thoughts of suicide. Now that he finally saw Zhu Qizhen, the only person who still believed in him, he cried like a child. Although the embroidered uniform guards had already sent back a message explaining why Kuang Yi came back first, it wasn't very detailed. Now that the real person was in front of him, Zhu Qizhen naturally had to ask clearly. He said, "Someone give the Grand Tutor a seat." After slowly sitting down, Kuang Ye's mood gradually calmed down. In the end, under Zhu Qizhen's questioning, he recounted what had happened to him, as well as what had happened to the majority of the Southern Ming Empire's observation group. He especially described Yang Qindong's warm reception in great detail. In the end, Kuang Yi said in a tearful voice, "Your Majesty, that brat Yang Hodong is clearly buying people's hearts." It can be imagined that the officials who went this time might not be bought over by him, but as the saying goes, if you take someone else's hand, you will be blinded. I'm afraid that in the following matters, they will be on Bugnam of Gojoseon's side. We have to guard against them. Zhu Qizhen listened to the details from beginning to end and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Although Kuang Yi wasn't a person who was good at telling stories from his words, one could still feel that Yang Qindong must have put in a lot of effort to receive the Southern Ming Empire's observation group. In addition, Yang Xie was indeed very powerful now. As the saying goes, a good official chooses a tree to nest in. He didn't dare to guarantee what would happen in the future. Has Crimson City really become so powerful? After thinking about it, Zhu Qizhen still asked with a trace of doubt. Yes, because this official's time was still too short. I'm afraid that I only saw the rough outline. The specifics should be more powerful than this official said. In this matter, although Kuang Yi didn't want to admit it, the truth was the truth. He had no choice but to speak the truth. This is really difficult to handle. Zhu Qizhen said with a difficult expression. Just as Kuang Yi said, the officials in the observation group could have been influenced by Yang Qindong. It wasn't impossible for them to have been bribed. However, without any real evidence, he could not just cut them off and do anything to the members of the observation group. there were 3,000 to 4,000 officials in the observation group, accounting for 1/3 of the officials in the Southern Ming Empire. In terms of influence, because the ranks of the officials weren't low, the lowest was at least a 5th rank official. Therefore, their influence was even greater. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they influenced more than half of the officials. Without any evidence, it wasn't difficult to imagine the consequences of making a move on them. If this was really the case, before the 5-star army attacked, the Southern Ming Empire would be in chaos. If this was really the case, the result was definitely not something that Zhu Qixin and the Southern Ming Empire could accept. If they couldn't capture people and couldn't make a move, what should they do next? At this moment, Zhu Qixin had a headache. Naturally, Huang Yi didn't have any better ideas. He had to face 3,000 to 4,000 officials. That was a huge group. His fellow countrymen, colleagues in the same department, as well as those who were related to his interests or were related to him by marriage. This group was so powerful that it was possible for them to overthrow the Southern Ming dynasty if they were not careful. Facing such a huge force, even the emperor couldn't do anything. This was because even during the time of Zhu Yuanzhang, the founder of the Ming dynasty, although he killed many officials and corrupt officials, he still didn't dare to make a move against 3,000 to 4,000 officials at once. How about the emperor give a decree and have them come back? Then send someone to communicate with them and make sure they don't talk nonsense. Then we'll wait and see what happens. Huang Yi could only come up with this idea. That's the only way. I'll write the decree in a bit. Before Zhu Qixin could think of a better idea, he could only say this. Then, as if he had thought of something, he asked, "That's right, Grand Tutor said that he went to the 5-star Army's headquarters. What did he see? In your opinion, if the Southern Ming Empire and the 5-star Army go to war, what are our chances of winning?" This was what Zhu Qixin wanted to know the most. History had always been like this. When political means couldn't solve a problem, only war could decide the outcome. At that time, the winner would be king and the loser would be in the wrong. If the Southern Ming Empire had a higher chance of winning, Zhu Qixin would have to consider mobilizing troops. This could be considered as striking first to gain the upper hand. When he looked at Huang Yi with anticipation, he was destined to be disappointed. This was because at this moment, the Minister of War lowered his head and didn't dare to look him in the eye. When it came to military matters, there were probably not many people more qualified to speak than him, the Minister of War. Huang Yi's understanding and control of the military wasn't something that the other ministers of war could compare to. This could be seen from the fact that he spent half a year in the various guard stations. And it was precisely because of this understanding that Huang Yi felt immense pressure at this moment. Although he had only spent half a day in the 5-star Army's headquarters, the impression that it had left on him was too deep. Whether it was the training method, the advanced weapons, or the logistical support, the Southern Ming Army could not compare to them. Over the years, although the Southern Ming Empire had invested in the military every year, it wasn't a high proportion. The Southern Ming Empire had Ming in the north, the 3 provincial kings in the west, and Bugnam of Gojoseon in the south. However, almost all of the officials didn't think that anyone would use force against the Southern Ming Empire. Ming couldn't even protect himself, so if he made a move against the Southern Ming Empire, he wouldn't have enough confidence. Facing the pressure of the 5-star Army, how could the 3 provincial kings take the initiative to make trouble for the Southern Ming Empire? That would be equivalent to seeking death. Only the 5-star Army posed the greatest threat. However, they had always been active outside of the Great Ming Empire's territory and had never taken the initiative to make a move against the Southern Ming Empire. Even in the north, Ming repeatedly made trouble for Yang Qindong, but they didn't retaliate. At most, they sent Ming back. Because of this, Almost everyone thought that although the five-star army was strong, they didn't have the strength to make a move against the Southern Ming Empire. Since this was the case, the Southern Ming Empire would protect itself first and wouldn't invest too much in the military. In their own words, they would sit back and watch their opponent die. They would wait for their opponent to panic and reveal an opening before attacking. It had to be said that the Southern Ming Empire's imperial court was a strange existence to place their hopes on their opponent. However, this was the general trend. Ever since Zhu Qizhen lost at the Tumu Castle, he was afraid of war. His request for the army was to just defend their territory and didn't have the ambition to expand their territory. Even the emperor was like this, not to mention the ministers below. Without enough military funds, the Southern Ming Empire's army could only muddle through. Because of the embezzlement of some officials, many soldiers who came from military families had problems eating and wearing clothes. Even if they didn't starve to death, they wouldn't be able to survive. Chapter 1641. They hadn't eaten for a long time and didn't have enough nutrition, causing most of the Southern Ming soldiers to look like they were emaciated. In comparison, the logistical support of the soldiers of the five-star army was very good. They could get whatever they needed. All of them were tall and sturdy. In addition, they had reasonable training. Most importantly, Yang Chendong valued them highly. Just comparing them to the army, the difference between the two sides was many levels. Not to mention, in terms of equipment, the five-star army was a pure firearms army. Their firearms could take a person's life from 100 steps away. On the other hand, what about the Southern Ming army? They were still using the most primitive weapons. Even if they had firearms, their strength would be greatly reduced due to lack of training. How could they be a match for the five-star army? Facing Zhu Qizhen's question, Kuang Yi wanted to tell the truth. However, if he did that, it would make the emperor sad and prove that he was incompetent. Thus, after thinking about it, he politely said, "Emperor, if we really fight, I'm afraid that we only have a 50% chance of winning." 50%? If that's the case, then it's 50%. There's nothing to be afraid of. After all, no one can say that they will definitely win. All right, since it's like this, Grand Tutor, you can go and prepare. As for how much silver you need, I'll give you an order later. Zhu Qizhen didn't know that Kuang Yi was comforting him. He really thought that the Southern Ming army was very strong and could fight against the five-star army. After hearing this, Kuang Yi wanted to explain. However, after thinking about it, he didn't say anything. He found that even if he said anything, it would be useless. Instead, it would make the emperor lose confidence. If that was the case, the Southern Ming army would be in danger. Moreover, there was no evidence that the five-star army would definitely make a move against them. Just like what the staff officer in the army headquarters of the five-star army said, there, not only the Southern Ming Empire, but also the topography of any power would be recorded. Perhaps he was thinking too much. With the spirit of AQ in his heart, Kuang Yi left the palace. He didn't even return home and went straight to the Ministry of War. Since the emperor had already said that he wanted to develop the military, he had to plan it well and get the silver first. Crimson City. Today was Yu Qian's day off, so he personally accompanied Chen Sun, Wang Zhuo, Xie Chong, Xiao Xian, Wei Luo, Shan Lu, and the imperial censor of the left to tour the city. Their destination this time was the Tomb of the Kings in the eyes of the citizens of Crimson Nest City. The so-called King's Tomb naturally referred to the place where the kings were buried. When the South Ming Kingdom's observation group walked past their courtyard, both Zhu Huiqiu and Mu Bin wanted to turn around and enter the house. However, they didn't dare to because they were already told that they had to stay outside the courtyard until the observation group left. Otherwise, they would starve for 3 days. Humans were iron, rice was steel. If they didn't eat a meal, they would panic. The two of them had violated the rules when they first arrived and starved for 3 days. That feeling was really uncomfortable, and they didn't want to experience it again. When the two of them obediently stood there like rare animals in the zoo, all the Southern Ming officials who saw them had a gloomy expression on their faces. It was as if they had eaten rat feces. Their hearts were disgusted, and their expressions were extremely ugly. However, there was nothing they could do. The two of them had been defeated by Bognam of Gojosian Fair and Square. They had brought this upon themselves. Other people couldn't interfere, nor did they dare to interfere. After walking for nearly 4 hours, they walked out from the other end of the king's tomb. Everyone's expression was different. Hee, there are still some courtyards that are empty, but it doesn't matter. Bognam of Gojosian said that they will be full one day. Yu Qian seemed to explain very casually. However, when these words were heard by the South Ming Kingdom's officials, they didn't mean that at all. What did he mean by, "it will be full one day"? Could it be that the South Ming Emperor and Bai Ming Emperor were also going to be locked up? It was unknown who it was that muttered this in a low voice. However, because everyone was thinking about something, the scene was extremely quiet. Thus, this sentence was quickly heard by everyone clearly. At this moment, all the officials' faces were filled with shock. They suddenly discovered that this assumption wasn't impossible. Since Yang Xia could defeat so many powerful enemies, why couldn't she deal with the South Ming Kingdom and Bai Ming Emperor? As a part of it, what should they do next? Where should they go? Chapter 1642. The trip this time had dealt a heavy blow to everyone's spirits. So much so that when the officials returned to the Yang family hotel, their faces were still as cold as ice. Yu Qian didn't care about this. He only knew that he had done what he needed to do. As for the rest, he would leave it to their king to deal with. Yang Qindong also learned about Yu Qian's trip to the king's tomb. After hearing Beta Persei's description of the reactions of the Southern Ming officials, he couldn't help but laugh and said, "Good, the fire has already been set up. Let's see how the fire will burn." The Bai Ming observation group was still in Crimson City. During this period of time, they went to many places, such as the Yang family school. When these officials saw that the children of the Han people in Crimson City could enter the school for free, they were really shocked. During the Great Ming Dynasty, because the people weren't rich and were exploited by the tyrants, there weren't many people who were literate. Using 1% as a ratio was already a bit exaggerated. Didn't they know that allowing the people to become literate was good for the progress of the people? Of course, they knew, but they still prevented this from happening. This was because they wanted to become a powerful group. They needed to have advantages, and literacy was an advantage. But in Crimson City, this kind of restriction didn't exist. All the children of the common people could enter the school for free. If they learned well, they would be used by the Yang Xia and become an official. They might even have great power. This was somewhat out of the expectations of the Southern Ming officials. How could a grassroots person have power? If that was the case, wouldn't it be a mess? But the Yang Xia clearly didn't care about this. The advantage of this was that the common people had culture, knowledge, and the ability to distinguish right from wrong. As long as they worked hard, they could become useful to the society, the country, and the people. In this way, although it was a shock to the powerful, it also allowed the Yang Xia to have more talents. They wouldn't encounter bottlenecks and various pressures in the process of development. In fact, there weren't any powerful people in the Yang Xia. Everyone relied on their own abilities. This was no longer the era of heroes and heroes of the father and son. He had to admit that there were more benefits to doing this. When power no longer belonged to certain people, the intensity of the competition would stimulate everyone to constantly work hard. Otherwise, they would face the danger of being eliminated. When the sounds of studying entered their ears, many of the Southern Ming Empire's officials looked pensive. They had a feeling that if they allowed Yangtze to continue developing, it wouldn't be a problem for them to replace the Southern Ming dynasty. Not only the school, but after walking around the factories, they realized that Yangtze was already so powerful. A complete light industry was developing into a heavy industry. With self-sufficiency, they no longer needed to rely on others and could still live well. This was also why Yangtze was so confident. It could be imagined that as time passed, Yangtze's workshop, lathe, and programming would pull further and further away from the primitive Southern Ming. In the end, the strength of both sides would not be on the same level. In the end, it would be normal for the Southern Ming to become Yangtze's subordinate. The more they understood, the more they felt, and the greater the pressure on them. This trip to Crimson City was like opening a new window, making all the officials in the observer group feel great pressure. Everyone knew that the stronger Yangtze was, the more danger the Southern Ming dynasty would be in. Their status and safety would be more and more uncertain. After all, no one wanted to see a powerful neighboring country appear. As they understood more, the use of the Yang family's department store and the Yang coins were also displayed in front of all the officials. When they were attracted by the dazzling array of items, they realized that the Yang coins in their hands had been taken away by their family members. Some of them had even been used to buy goods, especially when a few brand new bicycles appeared in front of the Yang family's hotel. These officials were shocked and angry. The horizons of the officials were naturally different from those of their family members. Although the bicycles were novel, they weren't enough to attract them. On the contrary, things like flashlights, sewing machines, watches, and binoculars were more attractive. In the eyes of these officials, flashlights were high-tech products. They were very practical. Whether it was for civilian or military use, they were good things. They hoped to learn from, understand, and imitate them. Needless to say, sewing machines could increase the production of the textile industry and clothes. It was undoubtedly a great contribution to the progress of society. Watches could accurately tell the time. It was convenient and also a symbol of status. Binoculars were even more useful when used in the military. Although the binoculars sold in the Yang family's department store were a bit low magnification and were far inferior to those of the five-star army, in the eyes of the country bumpkins, it was already very powerful. There were many ideas, but without the Yang coins, everything was useless. It was just that the family members had already spent all of it. Everything could no longer be recovered. Then another problem appeared. How could they obtain the Yang coins? After asking around, they found out that only officials had the opportunity to obtain Yang coins. They would be given a certain amount of Yang silver in their monthly salary. It was one of the most valuable and most valuable currencies. Using the opportunity to inquire about the Yang coins, the salary system of Yangtze officials appeared in front of the Southern Ming officials. As they understood more, they couldn't help but sigh. As a Yangtze official, the salary was really high. Some people even calculated carefully. As a Yangtze official, their salary was actually 50 times that of a Southern Ming official. Although the Yangtze was very strict with the corruption of officials, there was basically no gray income. However, if one could live a good life just by relying on their salary, who would be willing to stretch their hands everywhere, cause countless troubles, and be impeached all the time? Through the Yang coins, everyone had a better understanding of the Yangtze officials' salary system. This was the main reason why Yang Qindong gave them the Yang coins. As for some of the goods being bought by the Yangtze, Bugnam of Gojoseon didn't care. After all, it wouldn't be long before the Southern Ming Empire became a part of the Yangtze. So what if those things were passed on? Not only did the officials understand the origin and use of the yang coins, but the family members also had a deeper understanding. Some people couldn't help but sigh. If I could become a yang xie official, it would be a very happy thing. It was just a sigh. However, when the officials heard this sigh, they would be lying if they said that they weren't moved at all. Many people even started to consider whether it was possible to become a yang xie official from the southern Ming Empire. It was also at this time that Yu Qian and Shun Yu received Yang Qindong's instructions and unintentionally mentioned the 9 cabinet elders during the banquet. They specifically mentioned that there were only 5 cabinet elders. The remaining 4 spots were reserved for Southern Ming and Beiming officials. These people might be a bit bureaucratic, but it was undeniable that they had a lot of experience as an official. This was something that the new yang xie officials couldn't compare to. When faced with a problem, experienced officials would often have a very gentle way to solve it. This was something that could be learned and used as a reference. The cabinet elders' empty spot was right there. They couldn't help but think about it. All of a sudden, a few officials became excited. However, they had been officials for many years and had seen and heard too many things. On the surface, they didn't show any abnormalities. However, once this kind of impatience appeared in their hearts, they couldn't suppress it. At this point, the various thoughts and opinions that needed to be forced onto the observer group were basically completed. At this time, the Southern Ming Emperor Zhu Qizhen sent someone to deliver a decree to the Yang family hotel. It was to summon the observer group back to the Southern Ming Empire. Once the decree was issued, although there was still a month before the observer group was allowed to stay in Crimson City for 2 months, everyone had to go back. No matter how much they loved Crimson City, they were still officials of the Southern Ming Empire. Yang Qindong naturally knew about Emperor Ying's decree. Looks like someone can't hold it in. After laughing, Yang Qindong looked at Yu Qian and Shun Yu, who came to report, "The 2 of you will be busy for a while. It is our wish to serve the king." Yu Qian and Shun Yu stood up and bowed. After the decree was issued, the observer group was only given 3 days to prepare. Some of the family members were naturally a bit noisy. Clearly, they hadn't played enough. Or rather, there were still many places in Crimson City that they hadn't been to. They couldn't help but complain that the emperor was a bit unreasonable. As such, the officials were all trying their best to persuade them. At this time, Yu Qian and Shun Yu appeared in the Yang family hotel. Then, the observer group officials were called away by them. They said it was to send them off, but everyone knew that there must be something to talk about. Not only were the ordinary officials of the observation group called away, but even high-ranking officials like Chun Sun and Wang Zhuo were also invited to the palace by the Black Knights. Seeing the Black Cavalry eyeing them covetously, they were really worried that if they dared to refuse, what kind of serious consequences would there be? Just like that, 3 whole days passed. Not only did Yang Qindong, Yu Qian, and Shun Yu act, but even the other 3 elders, Luan Shaochen, Wu Qian, and Long Tainan, appeared in the Yang family hotel and invited the officials to a meal. All of a sudden, almost all of the officials who had reached the 4th rank and above were invited to the banquet. As for the content of the conversation, it was up to each person to decide. In reality, what Yang Qindong and the others talked about with the Southern Ming Empire officials wasn't a big matter. Sometimes it was just a small talk. For some officials, they didn't even make a wish to become an official. But was what they talked about that important? Chapter 1643. What was important was that they had talked about it. As long as the officials were talked about, they would be suspected when they returned to the Southern Ming dynasty. It would be even more difficult for them to be put in an important position. How could Chun Sun and Wang Zhuo not see the reason behind this? However, they had no other choice. In the territory of Qiqian City, They did not dare to go against Yang Qindong's good intentions. Moreover, they also needed to find a way out for themselves. Although being able to go to the meeting did not mean that they would definitely join the Yangxie, at least they would not offend Bugnam of Gojoseon. Moreover, so many officials did not refuse. So why would they refuse? Wasn't this the same as digging their own graves? No one with political wisdom would do such a foolish thing. In the same small courtyard, Yang Lu was listening to Yang Ying's report. He was talking about the officials of the Southern Ming Dynasty's observation group being talked about. Master, as of now, all the officials of rank 4 and above in the observation group have been talked about. Yang Qindong has used almost all the officials of the city lord's mansion and has already started to talk about the rank 5 officials. When Yang Ying said this, his face revealed an expression of admiration. At this moment, Yang Lu's face was also filled with admiration. He naturally saw through Yang Qindong's intentions. It was because of this that he could not help but say with admiration, "Amazing, my young master really has good methods." Presumably, Emperor Ingzong will have a headache and will not dare to put these people in important positions. This is equivalent to cutting off one of his own arms before the battle. Yang Ying also nodded and said, "That's right. If they don't dare to trust these people, then in a certain period of time, Ingzong will have no one to use. It is very likely that there will be internal chaos in the Southern Ming dynasty." "No, it is not a possibility, but a certainty," Yang Lu said with a very firm tone. Then his tone changed. "However, this has nothing to do with us. It is even a good thing. What we want is to take the chestnuts out of the chaos." "Right. How are the arrangements on Yang Yang's side?" "Everything is arranged properly. The poor and stupid him does not know that he is being used by us." Speaking of this matter, Yang Ying's face was filled with pride. This time, there were embroidered uniform guards among the members of the Southern Ming observation group. This was one of the methods the great Ming emperor used to monitor his subjects. One of the commanders named Wen Jing had another mission, which was to contact Yang Yang and create a false impression that Chao Jixiang wanted to join Bugnam of Gojoseon to lure him in. Hearing Yang Ying say that the plan was going well, Yang Lu's expression became better. "Good. Haha, if that's the case, we have to be prepared. Remember, this time we can only succeed and not fail. Otherwise, we will die without a burial ground." Yang Ying replied with a straight face, "Master, please rest assured. We have prepared for this for a long time. There will definitely be no problems." "All right, let's wait and see," Yang Lu said with a face full of excitement. Then he muttered to himself in a voice that no one else could hear, "I hope you can cooperate. Like this, as a master and servant, I can still spare your life. Otherwise, I can only force you to be ruthless." Crimson City Pier. This day was very lively. The 13,000 people of the Southern Ming Observation Group were queuing up to board the ship. Compared to the excitement they had when they came, most of them were reluctant to leave. They could eat well, sleep well, and have so many fun things here. It was really hard for them to give up. Now that they were finally going to leave, they were going to return to their previous lives. For a moment, a sense of disappointment filled everyone's hearts. Yu Qian, Shan Yu, and the others also appeared in front of the pier to send everyone off. They were bidding farewell to Chen Sun, Wang Zhua, and the others in front of the pier. With a bitter smile on his face, Chen Sun looked at Yu Qian in front of him and didn't know what to say. Thousands of words turned into one sentence. "Yu Qian, you've really screwed this old man over." "Master Chen, don't say that. Can't you see that our Yangxie is already much stronger than the Southern Ming Empire? This is because our king is virtuous. Otherwise, it would be like dealing with other foreign races and other countries." As long as the army moved, would the Southern Ming Empire be able to stop it? Yu Qian didn't feel that it was too much. Instead, he spoke the truth. During this time, Chen Sun also went to the 5-star Army's barracks. He looked at the equipment and the training process. He also saw the long line of young people signing up. Chen Sun was very envious that so many people in Crimson City volunteered to join the army. It was unlike the Southern Ming Empire, where the army relied on soldiers. When there weren't enough soldiers, they could only go to the various cities to recruit strong men. One was voluntary, the other was forced. The result was obvious. The conclusion was that the Southern Ming Empire was definitely not a match for the 5-star army. Thus, Yu Qian's words were true. However, if Chen Sun joined the Yangxie because of this, he wouldn't be able to get over it. He decided to think about it carefully. He didn't reply to Yu Qian's words and only smiled. On the other side, Shunyu was chatting with Wang Zhuo and the others. On the surface, it looked like they were enjoying themselves. Come over when you have time. As long as you are willing, the gates of Crimson City are always open for everyone, Shunyu said with a smile. Wang Zhuo and the others naturally wouldn't be stupid enough to immediately nod and agree to this obvious solicitation. They could only chuckle and change the topic. Bugnam of Gojoseon has arrived. Just as everyone was waiting to board the ship, a group of majestic cavalry came from not far from the dock. Then, Yang Chendong, who was wearing a golden cape, came from afar under the protection of the Black Knight Dragon Guards. King is here. Yu Qian and Shunyu immediately straightened their bodies and tidied their clothes before walking over. The other Southern Ming officials who hadn't boarded the ship also hurriedly stood in several rows with a respectful appearance. Soon, the cavalry arrived at the pier, and Yu Qian took the initiative to say, "King, didn't you say you weren't coming?" "How could that be? They are the backbone of our Han people. If they want to leave, how can this king not send them off?" Yang Chendong said as he dismounted. Then, accompanied by Yu Qian, Xinyu, and the others, he walked over to the group of Southern Ming officials and shook hands with them one by one. During this period of time, everyone was used to this way of greeting and shaking hands, so everyone was very cooperative. There were even some officials who, after shaking hands with Yang Chendong, had their faces flushed red. Needless to say, this was caused by excitement and excitement. While shaking hands with everyone, Yang Chendong said loudly, "I believe everyone has seen how happy the Han people are living under the leadership of Yang Xie. And we live in this era. Since we have the conditions, what we should do is to let more Han people live a better life. This can't be done by just relying on the efforts of this king and Yang Xie's officials. We still need everyone's support." "Well said, well said." The Southern Ming officials nodded in agreement. Using the people's livelihood as an example was indeed something that no one could refute. Seeing that the effect was achieved, Yang Chendong smiled and watched as everyone boarded the ships. Ships appeared one by one and left one by one, slowly sailing out of Crimson City's new pier. On the cruise ship, many members of the observer group were still waving their hands towards the shore, looking reluctant to part with them. Wang Zhiqing and his sister Wang Shang also waved for a while. When they saw that the pier was far away, they casually found a place to rest in the ship's cabin. Then Wang Shang's pleasant voice sounded, "Crimson City is so good. It's 10,000 times better than our capital. I really don't know when we will be able to come back." After sighing, Wang Shang said to herself, "Brother, if grandfather comes to Yangxie to be an official, do you think we can live here forever?" Wang Zhiqing, who was called by his sister, nodded perfunctorily. That's right. At this moment, he didn't hear what his sister said at all. All of his attention was on the ship's cabin. Chapter 1644. Speaking of the boat, because they had received Emperor Ying's decree, Their return speed was clearly faster. They had used close to 15 days to arrive and less than 10 days to return. They had arrived at the docks of the Suzhou prefecture. Once everyone was ashore, they immediately rushed to Tian Mansion, the capital of the Southern Ming Dynasty, Nanjing Mansion. The officials were all smart people, since they had returned to the Southern Ming Dynasty. Regardless of what had happened to their mentality, what they needed to do now was see the emperor and then express their loyalty. Wang Jiqing, Wang Shang, and the others also got off the boat. However, for some reason, they felt that the air they breathed was not as fresh as before. It was to the point that everywhere they looked was not pleasing to the eye. The formerly bustling capital was now like a countryside in their eyes. There were flaws everywhere. In particular, when they entered the capital and saw the occasional rice fields on the sides of the streets, they felt a wave of disgust and discomfort. In comparison, the incomparably clean streets in Crimson City, as well as the public toilets 1,000 meters away, seemed more humane. Zhu Qizhen met the members of the observer group one by one in the imperial palace. When he saw that everyone was extremely respectful when they saw him, for some reason, he did not feel as interested as before. He had a feeling that these people's smiles were too fake, as if they were acting with him. After the officials finished greeting each one of them, Zhu Qizhen finally spoke. "Beloved officials, I presume that you have all gained a lot from this trip to Crimson City. Since this is the case, go back and write a memorial to see if there is anything we can learn or imitate. Then we can also make changes, okay? Your Majesty is wise. This official will obey." The officials replied in unison. Then everyone left the imperial palace and returned home to write memorials. The next morning, in front of Zhu Qizhen's dragon table, there were memorials written by the various officials. Zhu Qizhen looked through them curiously. However, not long after, he angrily threw these memorials to the ground. It had to be said that these memorials talked about many things. For example, the Ministry of Personnel's memorial said that they were going to clean up the officials again. Anyone who was found to be corrupt would be heavily punished. For the sake of governance, officials were not allowed to engage in business. Anyone who took over extra land should also be returned. Anyone who had business in their family should also immediately stop to prevent collusion between officials and business. The Ministry of Revenue reported that they were going to reinstitute the business tax and collect heavy taxes. Regardless of whether one was a grand scholar, high scholar, or elementary scholar, they would still have to pay taxes when doing business. If the status of the craftsman is raised, will the status of other people be raised as well? Especially this imperial censor. According to what he said, are we living in a stinky environment every day? The common people will get sick when they eat grains. This is originally a matter of heaven and earth. How can it be that the common people's production has anything to do with our current environment? After calling out the names of the various departments, Zhu Qizhen overturned the dragon case in a fit of anger. The eunuchs at the side were so scared that they trembled in fear, not daring to say a word. Are they rebelling? All of them are pointing fingers at me. I think they have clearly been bribed by Yang Qindong. We don't believe that Crimson City is really as good as they say. How is this observing and learning? This is clearly eating other people's food and then coming back to bite their master. These people all deserve to be killed. They deserve to be killed. Zhu Qizhen couldn't be blamed for being so angry. He had his subordinates give their opinions because he wanted to see if they had any gains. If there was, he could make appropriate changes without putting in too much effort. But now, how was this appropriate change? It was clearly overturning everything. The Southern Ming dynasty was also degraded by everyone. As the emperor, he naturally had no face. It would be strange if he wasn't angry. After venting his anger, Zhu Qizhen stood there panting. The head eunuch Qian Seng Bao finally found an opportunity and hurriedly knelt on the ground. "Your Majesty, don't be too angry. Your health is more important. It's not worth it for these officials." "Yes, it's not worth it," Zhu Qizhen said in a fit of pique. Then he said, "Go, summon beloved official Chow to see us." The so-called beloved official Chow was the guard of the embroidered uniform guard, Chow Jixiang. The kneeling Qian Seng Bao naturally didn't get along with him, but this was the emperor's order. He didn't dare to stop him. He hurriedly gave a look to the eunuch at the side. At this moment, Qian Seng Bao was secretly delighted. He was thinking that the emperor had nowhere to vent his anger. Perhaps Chow Jixiang came at this time to eat melons. Chow Jixiang, who was on duty in the palace, was quickly found. He came to the throne room and knelt down. "You all can leave first. Great companion, you can also leave." He glanced at Qian Seng Bao. Because of the appearance of Yang Chendong, this little butterfly, Zhu Qizhen didn't experience being captured by Yes Hen. Thus, Chow Jixiang didn't appear to save his master. Now, his great companion became Qian Seng Bao's eunuch. The emperor summoned Qian Seng Bao and wanted to drive him away. Qian Seng Bao naturally wasn't happy, but at this moment, he didn't dare to disobey the emperor's order. He could only agree and leave. After he walked out of the throne room, he stood there in deep thought. Recently, every time Zhu Qizhen saw Chow Jixiang, he was always mysterious. Even his great companion was on guard against him. This made him feel a sense of danger. If Chow Jixiang really replaced him, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to have a good ending. Internal strife among eunuchs was often the fiercest. Those in power could get whatever they wanted. As for those who were stepped on, it was a fate worse than death. "Eunuch Qian, why are you here? Why aren't you serving the emperor?" Qian Seng Bao, who was in deep thought, was surprised when a voice came from behind him. He looked in the direction of the voice and saw the head eunuch of the empress, Mao Mu. Although they were both head eunuchs, one served the empress while the other served the emperor. The difference in status was too great. "Oh, so it's eunuch Mao. What's wrong? Are you leaving the palace?" "Yes, the empress wants to weave cloth. Aren't I going out to choose?" Mao Mu said with a fawning expression. In the entire southern Ming eunuch group, although Mao Mu carried the identity of a head eunuch, his real power wasn't even in the top 10. This was all because the empress's temper was very good, and she never cared about matters. The master was weak, so as the eunuch by the master's side, he naturally didn't have much power. But because of this, Mao Mu became a transcendent existence in the entire group of eunuchs. This person did not fight for fame or profit. Because of the empress, not many people were interested in his position. This made it seem that he had a good relationship with all the eunuchs, and they all seemed to be good. In terms of status, Mao Mu was far from them. But Qian Seng Bao was a very smart person. He definitely wouldn't casually offend people for no reason. So when he saw Mao Mu ask him, he chuckled and explained, "It's like this. The emperor wants to meet Chow Changwei alone, so I came out to get some fresh air." "Oh, so it's like that. It's just that Chow Changwei's thoughts are very big. It's not a good thing for such an ambitious person to always be by the emperor's side." After Mao Mu heard this, he first had a shocked expression on his face. Then, he seemed to say this very casually. Just as he finished speaking, Mao Mu quickly covered his mouth with his right hand with an embarrassed expression. Between eunuchs, unless there was a life and death feud, they wouldn't speak ill of each other in front of each other. That was the behavior of a vile person, and it was shameful. Normally, if Mao Mu said this, Qian Seng Bao would even reprimand him. After all, he was now the head of the group of eunuchs. He had the obligation to maintain the unity of the group of eunuchs, at least on the surface. Chapter 1645. But now that he was angry, Mao Mu's words hit the bottom of his heart. He said with an angry face, "That's right, I thought I was the only one who thought Chao Changwei was ambitious. I didn't expect that Mao Gonggong also thought so. Then I really have to be careful." "Ha ha, Qian Gonggong, you are busy. I still have to go out of the palace. I will talk to Qian Gonggong when I have the chance." Mao Mu didn't say anything this time. Some words were enough to be said once. Saying too much would have the opposite effect. Mao Mu left like this. Along the way, he took the token given by the empress and walked out of the palace with the 6 little eunuchs. Then he walked into the market and looked around. He went to a few shops, but didn't buy any suitable cloth. During this process, no one noticed that while he was chatting with someone in a cloth shop, he had spread the news of Zhu Qizhen's rage and summoning Chao Jixiang. In the entire Yangxia, there were no more than 10 people who knew that Mao Mu was Yang Hodong's spy. Among them, there was an intelligence team that was responsible for contacting him. Wang Shan, the head of the telecommunications department, was the one who knew about it. He was the one who reported everything directly to Yang Chendong. Even the head of the security bureau, Yang San, didn't know. Because of this, Mao Mu's safety was guaranteed. Even if Chao Jixiang had joined forces with the Yangxia traitor, he still didn't know that Mao Mu was Yangxia's spy. When Mao Mu reported some of the news in the palace, Zhu Qizhen was listening to Chao Jixiang's report with a serious expression. "Your Majesty, the matter is like this. I have already contacted that person. He will lead Bugnam of Gojoseon to the ship. When the time comes, we will choose to take action at sea. At that time, no matter how great his ability is, he won't be able to escape." "And good. That's right. Didn't you say there was a backup plan?" Zhu Qizhen asked with interest. "Yes, Your Majesty. I don't know if you still remember Shaowa Province's President Kuroda, who is the Navy General of Shaowa Province. When the Shaowei Province was destroyed by Yangxia, he had escaped with 100,000 soldiers. Over the years, although his strength has weakened, he still has 50,000 Navy elites in his hands. When the time comes, they will also appear and join us to kill Bugnam of Gojoseon. However, he also made a request. That was if he wanted to reclaim the entire Shaowei province, he needed the emperor to acknowledge their existence. There is also that Yang Lu. He wants to inherit the throne after Bugnam of Gojoseon's death, but he said that he will definitely obey the emperor's management. Once he stabilizes his position, he is also willing to send troops to attack Beiming and help the emperor unify the world. As soon as Chao Jixiang opened his mouth, he laid out all the plans and the requests of the so-called allies. Hearing this, Zhu Qizhen frowned. After hesitating for about half an hour, Zhu Qizhen opened his mouth. "We can agree to President Kuroda's request. Originally, we didn't need to pay too much attention to a small island country. But Yang Lu's request, Chao Jixiang was the best at reading people's expressions. When he saw Zhu Qizhen's expression, he guessed something. He immediately said, 'Emperor, please rest assured. We can agree to his request first. After he stabilizes Yangxia and helps us deal with Beiming, we can find an opportunity to kill him.' Yes, that's what I mean. Bugnam of Gojoseon's appearance has already caused chaos in the great Ming dynasty for so long. If he dies, there can't be any more chaos. We can't fall for the same thing twice." Zhu Qizhen said with a satisfied expression. Just like that, the two of them, Zhu Qizhen and Chao Jixiang, began to perfect the plan. This conversation lasted for nearly 4 hours. In the end, Zhu Qizhen ordered someone to bring in the meal and even rewarded Chao Jixiang to eat with him. This made Qian Sanbao, who was waiting outside, very envious. At this time, he felt that his position was in danger, but he didn't have any better ideas, because he didn't know what Chao Jixiang was doing next. In the palace of Qian City, the telecommunications director, Wang Shan, brought the telegram sent by Mao Mu to Yang Qindong. After reading the contents of the telegram, Yang Qindong thoughtfully asked, "Did you bring the copy of the telegram from Director Yang San?" "Yes." Wang Shan also sent the copy of the telegram that he had prepared in advance to Yang Qindong. After staying by Yang Qindong's side for so many years, Wang Shan was also used to the way the young master worked. Therefore, he would send a copy of the telegram that was related to reporting to him. After receiving the telegram from Yang Qindong 2 days ago, Yang Qindong carefully read it again. Then he put his right hand on the table and tapped it thoughtfully. He seemed to be thinking about something. After about the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he asked, "Did you find anything from the phone that I asked you to monitor?" "No, that phone is rarely used." Presumably, he also knows that some things are not safe to communicate through the phone. Wang Shan replied in a deep voice, "Well, he's grown up. He's so careful when doing things, but unfortunately, he didn't use it properly. Sigh, since he chose this path of no return, he can't blame anyone for everything." "Okay, Wang Shan, go back. Remember, don't tell anyone about what happened today, not even Beta Persei." In the entire Yangxia, Yang Qindong trusted tigers, Ming the most, followed by a few of his servants, and then Wang Shan. After all, as the head of the telecommunications department, he had access to coarse secrets. Therefore, although he was only a department head, Wang Shan's position in the entire Yang faction was extremely high. Very few people would not give him face. Wang Shan himself also understood that he could be where he was today, all thanks to Yang Qindong. He only needed to do things well, and his status would be stable. He nodded heavily. "Young master, please rest assured that no one else will know about this." Wang Shan was able to address Yang Qindong as the young master, just like the servants. This showed how much Wang Shan was valued. Wang Shan took his leave, leaving Yang Qindong alone in the palace study. He sighed. Some things did develop beyond his expectations. He had thought that someone would betray him. After all, when one's status was high and one's vision was broadened, one would have the motivation and ideas to move up. However, when something really happened, and the person who betrayed him was someone he trusted very much, Yang Qindong still felt very uncomfortable. He did not know how long he had been sitting there. All kinds of memories and pasts between Yang Qindong and Yang Lu flashed through his mind. It was not until Huyen appeared in the study and brought a bowl of lotus seed soup in front of him that Yang Qindong came back to his senses. He smiled apologetically. "Look, I made you worry again." "No, I just wanted to see you. Don't think too much about it. We've already gotten enough. Even if we stop now, we won't have any regrets." Hu Yan walked behind Yang Qindong with a smile and gently massaged his shoulders. Feeling the care and gentleness, Yang Qindong reached out and patted Hu Yan's arm. "Good, optimistic spirit. Take it easy, take it easy. Ha ha ha." At this moment, Yang Qindong's mood seemed to be much better. In contrast, Yang Lu outside the small courtyard of the palace was very proud. As he expected, although when Jing had gone back, he had already convinced Yang. If the plan went smoothly, there should be a result soon. And he just needed to push the boat along. "Yang, you can go and do that thing now. This little one understands." Yang nodded in agreement, then turned and left. On the surface, after the southern Ming kingdom's observation team left, Qian City became stable again. But in fact, there was an undercurrent surging, and a conspiracy was shrouding Yang Qindong's head. 2 days later, Yang went straight to the palace. His face was full of joy, as if he had done something great. On the same day, Beta Persei's mother-in-law, Batama, suddenly entered Yang Xie First Hospital because of a serious illness. As the son-in-law, Beta Persei naturally had to perform well. He had already applied for 10 days of leave from Yang Qindong to serve his mother-in-law. In the palace, Yang Qindong saw Yang Qindong and said, "Fourth brother, it's done. I have already discussed with the commander of the Southern Ming brocade guards, Wen Jing. As long as you, Bugnam of Gojoseon, are willing to admit it personally to the other party, and Chao Jixiang is willing to submit to Yang Xie, he will bring all the brocade guards. Anyway, at that time, they will control the Southern Ming Palace. As long as my army arrives, we can take over the entire Southern Ming Kingdom with the smallest price." Looking at Yang Qindong's happy expression, Yang Qindong smiled. "Fourth brother, how did you discuss it?" "Oh, it's like this." Yang Qindong explained the plan that they had discussed. After an hour, Yang Qindong understood everything. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "Okay, this prince agrees. I will meet with Chao Jixiang outside the Wenzhou port. At that time, this prince will personally promise that as long as Chao Jixiang is willing to help me, Yang Xie, not only will he not be punished, he will also be rewarded greatly." Yang Qindong was very happy when he saw that Yang Qindong had agreed. "That's great. However, fourth brother, you must remember that in order to prevent the news from leaking out, you must not bring too many troops. It will not be good if the news is leaked." Is this fourth brother's idea, or their idea? Yang Qindong asked after hearing this. However, his heart was beating very fast because if this was his fourth brother's idea, then he could not help but suspect whether Yang Yang was also involved. Fortunately, Yang Yang quickly gave the answer. "Of course, it is Chao Jixiang's idea. He is afraid that the news will be leaked. When that time comes, Ingzong will be prepared, and he will not be able to complete his mission of controlling the imperial palace. Of course, with fourth brother's current status, even if he cannot bring too many people, he will still be accompanied by the black cavalry. After all, one must always be vigilant." Hearing Yang Qindong say this, Yang Qindong was finally able to relax. He nodded and said, "Okay, fourth brother, I understand the matter, and I also agree. Next, you all can set a time together. When there is an accurate time, just inform sixth brother." Chapter 1646. "That's the best, ha ha ha." Yang Qindong grinned. Obviously, he wanted to facilitate this matter. This was equivalent to him making a great contribution. At that time, no one would dare to look down on him. Who would say that he was relying on his relationship with fourth brother Yang Qindong? He wanted to prove that he was also a capable person. Yang Qindong agreed. The news quickly reached Yang Lu's ears. In the small courtyard, Yang Ying was so happy that he forgot himself. After all, after so many years of hiding, there was finally a conclusion to this matter. He felt that the burden on his shoulders was a lot lighter. Yang Lu, on the other hand, frowned in joy. "Yang Ying, why do you think he agreed so readily? Is there a trap in this?" "How can that be? Master has been hiding it very well. Besides, this matter was facilitated by Yang Yang. We didn't even show our faces. Even if there is suspicion, it won't fall on us. Master, you have to hurry up. It's best if you can fight to go to the sea with him. This way, our chances of winning will be higher." Yang Ying said without any doubts. "That's right." Yang Lu nodded. He felt that Yang Ying's words were very reasonable. He immediately put down the doubts in his heart and said, "This problem is not difficult. Right now, only Beta Persei, Yang Wu and I are in Qiqian City. Yang Wu has to guard the palace and keep an eye on the officials in Qiqian City. Beta Persei also has to keep an eye on the hospital. With Yang Qindong's habit of sympathizing with his subordinates, he most likely won't bring him this time. So, other than me, who else is more suitable?" After this analysis, Yang Ing also felt that this was the truth. He immediately said, "Then I have to congratulate Master. I'm afraid that it won't be long before this little one will call Master King." "Ha ha! Well said, well said." Yang Lu thought that the southern Ming emperor had promised him that once Yang Chendong died, he would inherit the position of Bugnam of Gojoseon. He immediately laughed happily. At this moment, Yang Chendong had already agreed to meet Chao Jixiang in private. The meeting at sea seemed fair to everyone, but Yang Chendong knew that there was a great conspiracy behind this seemingly fair meeting. If it was just him alone, he wouldn't be afraid of any conspiracy. It was still the same sentence with Datsang in hand. As long as they didn't kill him immediately, it would be impossible for them to kill him. But this time, he was not alone. There were many black cavalry following him. He could not leave his brothers to the side. That would be irresponsible. If he did not bring the black cavalry with him, it would definitely arouse suspicion. In this case, it was necessary to make some preparations in advance. So he went to the Navy headquarters. Deputy Commander Gao Xiong had already left with the Navy, and not long ago he sent a report of victory. In front of the leading ships of this world, whether it was speed or firepower, they were several times stronger than the other side. The expansion of the Navy can be said to be very smooth, with the cooperation of the Navy's Cold Vanguard Division. So far, they haven't encountered any difficult bones. Yang Chendong even knew that even in the future, when the Yangtze Navy enters the Western Europe, there won't be any decent opponents. At this time, the West was far from being as developed as the future. There were even many places that didn't have their own civilization, let alone technology. With this opportunity, Yangtze can really unify the West. Otherwise, once they really start to rise, even if they send several times more troops, it will be difficult to accomplish. It can be said that now is the best time. Yang Chendong came to the Navy headquarters. Of course, he didn't ask about the Navy's overseas expeditions. If there is any news, someone will report it to him. He came here to make some arrangements for the meeting with Chao Jixiang. Although Yang Chendong has already seen that this is a trap, he doesn't know how many people the other side has, how many preparations, and how many people are involved. He didn't even let people inquire about it, fearing that it will alert the enemy. That is, Yang Chendong dared to take such a big risk without knowing anything. I'm afraid that if he said that he is second, no one would dare to say that he is first. This time, he came to the Navy to make the corresponding arrangements. Although he doesn't know the other side's means, he should prepare something that can't be neglected. Now, in charge of the work here is the commander of the Navy's Cold Vanguard Division, Nie Tong. He is also one of Yang Xie's old men, and also one of Yang Chendong's trusted Navy generals. In the room of the commander-in-chief of the headquarters, Yang Chendong and Nie Tong sat facing each other. After that gaze constantly scanned Nie Tong's body. Nie Tong's forehead was oozing with cold sweat. Today, with Yang Chendong's power, few people can face him calmly. Perhaps only people like Yu Qian, who have a lot of experience, can do it. Can I trust you? These words caused Nie Tong to stare blankly for a moment before he abruptly stood up. With an incomparably confident tone, he said, "Sixth young master, this subordinate is at your beck and call. I am willing to serve you at any time." From the results of the investigation of the Intelligence Department, the Navy's department is still very pure. There is a war to fight. There is something to do. There is no time to think about other things. Coupled with the investigation of the Intelligence Department, Nie Tong has won his trust. "Very good, Commander Nie. This king asks you, what is the largest speed of the warship in the Navy?" The so-called speed refers to the speed of the ship at sea. About 1 knot is equal to nearly 2 kilometers. For example, The speed of the Ming dynasty's ships is about 5 or 6 knots, which is equivalent to about 10 to 12 kilometers per hour. For example, the speed of the later Liaoning warship is 29 knots, which is less than 60 kilometers per hour. Because the Yangtze Navy ships used steam cars, now the maximum speed can reach between 10 to 12 kilometers per hour. Just in terms of speed, it is twice the speed of the opponent. Reporting to the 6th Young Master, the Navy dock has 10 fifth-level warships, 30 fourth-level warships, hundreds of third-level warships, and other second-level and first-level warships. The third-level and above warships have reached a speed of more than 10 knots. In these years, the Navy's warships have been developed. In the past, only the commander-level commanders can command fifth-level warships because of the emergence of sixth-level warships. Now it has become the division's exclusive use. And so on, the Navy has become many times stronger than before. Good. Hearing that there are so many powerful ships, Yang Qindong is very satisfied. He decided to use all of the third-level and above warships. Although it seems a bit exaggerated, one of Yang Qindong's rules of conduct has always been to not do anything. Besides, this time there is still a naval battle to fight. No one knows what Yang Qindong and Nie Tong talked about in the end. Everyone only knows that for more than an hour, the door of the room was not opened. In the end, Yang Qindong left with satisfaction. The Navy dock is a first-class military secret location. Without permission, even the Yang family's servants have no way to get close. Based on this point, this trump card has become a secret, and there is no need to worry about it being known by others. The only one who really knows the plan is Nie Tong. The other members of the entourage only know that there is a sea mission. As for where they are going and what they are going to do, it will only be revealed at the last moment. After a trip to the Navy headquarters, Yang Qindong returned to the palace and went to the telegraph office. Except for the director Wang Shan, who is still inside, the other staff have been temporarily exiled for various reasons. Even if the servants around him can betray him, Yang Qindong really can't casually trust other people now. After leaving Wang Shan, the two of them operated the telegraph for a while. After doing this, Yang Qindong stretched and said to Wang Shan, "Wang Shan, this time you stay at home. You don't have to go out with me." No, this subordinate is not talented. I am willing to follow the young master until death. Wang Shan suddenly stood up and said with an unquestionable voice. Although he now has a faint feeling that this sea trip will be very dangerous, he still wants to follow Yang Qindong. Everything he has today is all thanks to Bognam of Gojoseon. Now that there is danger, how can he shrink back? Okay. Thinking that many things can't be done without Wang Shan's help, Yang Qindong nodded and agreed after a little hesitation. Then he got up and patted Wang Shan on the shoulder and said, "If that's the case, you must be careful on this trip." "Yes, young master, this subordinate will be careful and won't let you down." After a series of arrangements, the next problem is the follower. Although Beta Persei took the time to come from the hospital to the palace and asked to follow, Yang Qindong still happily refused. "Beta Persei, your mother-in-law is sick. Now is the time for you to perform well. Besides, you have followed me many times. This time won't make a difference. Don't go this time. Just let—" Yang Qindong's gaze moved between Yang Wu and Yang Lu, who were standing on the side, and finally fell on the latter. "Let Yang Lu follow the young master." "Yes." Yang Lu was overjoyed, but his face did not change. Instead, he looked at Beta Persei and promised, "Second brother, don't worry, I will be fine with the young master." Then, okay. Beta Persei saw that Yang Lu took the initiative to stand up, and this was the young master's idea, so he did not fight for it. After all, they were all servants, and he couldn't be the only one to enjoy the good things. He also needed to give others a chance. After deciding on Yang Lu's follower, Yang Qindong personally appointed the third captain of the Black Cavalry, Badao Jiang, and asked him to bring 500 Longwei with him. The matter was settled. Regarding Yang Qindong only bringing 500 Black Cavalry, whether it was Beta Persei, Yang Wu, or Yang Lu, all showed faint doubts. Obviously, the Black Cavalry now had 5,000 people, and only 500 people were too few. Chapter 1647. Quite a lot. Yang Qindong chuckled. The last time we went to Yunnan, we only had 500 Black Cavalry, and there were no problems. Not to mention that this time, other than the Black Cavalry, we also have the Cold Vanguard Army. Oh, right. Yang Lu, go back to the Navy headquarters and look for Commander Nie Tong to see who is suitable to accompany us. We don't need too many people, just a battalion of 500 people will do. Yang Lu, who was called out, was very excited and quickly agreed. He did not expect that Yang Qindong would value and trust him so much. At this time, his mentality was shaken. Is it really good for him to go against his master, who trusts him so much? Yang Lu did not immediately go to the Navy headquarters. Instead, he first returned to the small courtyard and saw Yang Ying. Master, there is no turning back. Now that your matter has been revealed to the Emperor of the Southern Ming Empire, it is impossible to stop even if you want to. Besides, Yang Qindong has no one by his side right now, so he thought of you. Once the problem with Beta Persei is solved, I'm afraid he will kick you aside. You want to endure it again. As the person Chao Jixiang sent to Yang Lu's side, Yang Ying naturally would not allow things to stop halfway. Hearing these words, Yang Lu nodded continuously. He just could not bear it. In fact, he did not have the intention to stop the plan. Otherwise, he would not have discussed it with Yang Ying and would have directly confessed to Yang Qindong. Now that he got the answer he wanted, he nodded vigorously and said, "That's right, this is my opportunity. I must grasp it." In the Navy headquarters, Yang Lu's figure appeared. Commander Nie Tong, who had already received the news, was personally accompanying him. Then, a battalion commander called Wang Nanhu was called. No one knew that Wang Nanhu had already been bribed by Yang Lu. This was also an accident. When Yang Lu was still managing the intelligence agency in the Southern Ming Empire, he received news about Wang Nanhu. This person was actually an early spy that the Southern Ming Brocade Guard had sent to Crimson City. However, what was unexpected was that ever since Wang Nanhu entered Crimson City and Cold Front, his attitude changed rapidly. He actually took the initiative to cut off all ties with the Southern Ming Empire and changed his name from Wang Hunan to Wang Nanhu. Even though there was only a difference of one word, it was very difficult for the Southern Ming Empire's embroidered uniform guard to find someone. The defensive measures of Crimson City were simply too strict. Who knew how many spies had been sent out over the years, but all of them either went missing or were captured and killed. If Chao Jixiang and Yang Xie hadn't started working together and provided this list, Wang Nanhu might have hidden for the rest of his life and become a real Yang Xie. Wang Nanhu was not the only one on the list. There were many others. However, most of them could no longer be found, or it could be said that they had hidden themselves very well. On the other hand, Wang Nanhu, whose name was reversed, was too easy to recognize, which was why Yang Lu had discovered him. It was because of this that Yang Lu named Wang Nanhu. Nie Tong had already received Yang Qindong's secret order to fully cooperate with Yang Lu's actions. Of course, he wouldn't stop him and agreed. After that, Wang Nanhu went to Yang Lu's small courtyard to report. Wang Nanhu didn't know that his identity had been exposed. Over the years, he had even forgotten that he was a spy of the Southern Ming Empire's embroidered uniform guard. It was because he had been very happy over the years in Crimson City. This was because he had confirmed the strength of the Yang Xie. He was also certain that only the Yangtze could truly let the Han people live a luxurious life without worrying about food or clothing. Over the years, Wang Nanhu had also done his best to integrate himself into this life. Because of his efforts, he had now become a battalion commander of the Navy's cold front. It could be imagined that his future was bright and promising. When he came to the small courtyard with this thought, he first saw Yang Lu sitting on the chair. He knew that this was one of Bugnam of Gojoseon's most trusted servants. He immediately gave a military salute and said with an excited tone, "The Navy's Cold Front's 1st Army's 1st Division's 3rd Regiment's 2nd Battalion Commander, Wang Nanhu has come to report. Leader, please ask for instructions." Your spirit is not bad." Looking at Wang Nanhu, who was standing there like a pine tree, Yang Lu chuckled. This was considered a compliment. Wang Nanhu, who was in his 30s, also laughed embarrassedly. But Yang Lu's next words made him suddenly feel as if he had fallen from heaven to hell. His whole body was covered in a layer of cold sweat. "But I don't know, seeing you like this, what will Chao Jishang's guild think?" Yang Lu, who seemed to say this casually, stared at Wang Nanhu without turning his gaze away. Like a thunderclap in his mind, Wang Nanhu suddenly realized that he once had another identity, a secret agent of the Southern Ming Empire's embroidered uniform guard. At this moment, the past flashed through his mind like a movie, causing his face to turn red and white. Wang Nanhu was still struggling as his expression kept changing. He was betting that Yang Lu was trying to trick him. Perhaps this was a test before he was given a mission. Therefore, he tried his best to calm himself down. Then he chuckled and said, "Chief, what are you talking about? This subordinate doesn't understand." Seeing that Wang Nanhu was still struggling, Yang Lu laughed and said, "Is that so? That's right, Wang Nanhu can't understand, but Wang Hunan should be able to, right?" Boom. Another thunderclap flashed through his mind. At this moment, Wang Nanhu no longer had any illusions. Even his real name was found out. This was no longer a coincidence. The other party already knew his true identity. Since the other party already knew, Wang Nanhu didn't deny it. Instead, he looked around and thought that there must be soldiers lying in ambush. He should be taken down soon. All right, there's no need to look around. There's no ambush. I'm the only one who knows your current identity. Of course, Yang Lu could tell what Wang Nanhu was thinking. He smiled casually and threw another bomb. "Wang Nanhu, I know that you really want to cut ties with the Southern Ming Empire, so I can give you a chance. Not only will your identity not be known by others, but you can also be a true Yangtze from now on. No one can talk about your past. What do you need me to do?" Wang Nanhu's eyes were filled with hope again. "You don't need to know now. When I need you, you just need to do as I say. Don't tell me you still don't trust me?" Yang Lu's tone was profound. "All right, then I'll listen to your orders." Wang Nanhu agreed because he knew Yang Lu's identity. He really hoped that his relationship with the Southern Ming Empire could be severed. Now that the opportunity was in front of him, he naturally had to seize it. "Very good." Seeing that Wang Nanhu agreed, Beta Persei finally had a smile on his face. "Next, gather your battalion and prepare to follow Bugnam of Gojoseon to carry out missions. Remember, you have to listen to my orders. You only have one chance to perform. If you don't seize it, don't blame others. Please don't worry, Chief. I will definitely seize the opportunity." Wang Nanhu said without hesitation. In the Imperial Palace of Crimson City, Yang Qindong appointed a commander named Wang Nanhu. When Yang Qindong heard this, he didn't say anything. He didn't even send people to investigate. He wanted to see how Yang Lu, whom he had groomed, was going to deal with him. And just in case, after all, there was no absolute victory or defeat in war, so using the remaining 3 days, Yang Chendong separately found the deputy commander of the army, Lung Song, and the commander of the navy, Nyatong, and announced the establishment of the military committee to them. The military committee, also known as the military committee, was equivalent to the cabinet of the civil officials. The members were initially decided to be 5 people. They were responsible for military affairs. The person directly in charge was himself, and the second in charge was Crown Prince Yangbo. In other words, if something happened to him, or if something urgent happened and he couldn't be contacted, Yangbo would be in charge of military affairs. At that time, even the cabinet had no right to interfere with military affairs. When Yang Chendong took Yangbo's hand and announced in the army headquarters, the first batch of military committee members were Tiger's Mane, Long Song, Gao Xiong, Tian Yu, and Tian Hu. Deputy Commander Lung Song then sent Yang Chendong and his son out of the army headquarters. When the 2 of them arrived at the main street, Yangbo said thoughtfully, "Father, are you leaving Crimson City again?" "Yes." Yang Chendong didn't intend to hide it from Yangbo. As his eldest son grew up, there were some things he needed to know. "Father, is it very dangerous this time?" Yangbo raised his head. His voice was still a little immature as he looked at Yang Chendong and asked again. Yang Chendong didn't expect his son to have such observation and perception at the age of 11. He was very pleased. "Yes, it is a little dangerous, but fortunately, everything is under Father's control." "Then I'm relieved." A sincere smile appeared on Yangbo's face. Looking at Yangbo's adult-like appearance, Yang Chendong smiled and patted Yangbo's head. He said, "Bo, remember, as a king, you have to trust your subjects, but you also have to be careful. You also need to have your own judgment and not be swayed by others. Because of the difference in status, they might not really think about you. As long as you think it's right, just do it." "Yes, I'll remember." With Yangbo's comprehension ability, he naturally couldn't understand everything, but this didn't stop him from remembering it and slowly understanding it when he returned. After the cabinet, the military committee was also established. Just like that, Yangtze's 2 major institutions began to operate. Yang Chendong could also put down his burden and do what he should do. Chapter 1648. On the morning of the 3rd day, Yang Chendong told Hu Yen and the others that he needed to go out and would be back in a few days. Then he walked out of the palace with firm steps facing the rising sun. Outside the palace, Ba Daojiang and the 500 black cavalry were already in formation, waiting for orders to set off at any time. According to 4th brother Yang Yang, this meeting with Chao Jixiang was a very secret matter, so they couldn't let more people know about it, in case the news was leaked. So Yang Chendong really didn't tell anyone. Of course, this wasn't because he believed these words, but because he didn't need to let others worry. On the new pier of Crimson City, Yang Yang and Yang Lu were already waiting. Battalion Commander Wang Nanhu was also waiting with 500 cold vanguard soldiers, armed with live ammunition. 4th brother, "Young master, greetings, Wu King Nan." All sorts of greetings followed. Yang Chendong's expression was calm as he looked at Yang Lu and asked, "Is everything ready?" "Young master, everything is ready. We can set off at any time." Yang Lu suppressed the excitement in his heart. "Good, then let's set off." Yang Chendong nodded and walked towards the nearest Class 5 warship. This time, in order to not attract attention, Yang Lu didn't bring a Class 6 warship. Instead, he chose the Class 5 warship in front of him. Soon, the black cavalry boarded one by one. Then, the ropes were retracted and the 3 warships left the pier. At this time, at the pier, Nyatong was leading the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd regiments of the 1st Division. Because outsiders were forbidden from approaching the pier, no one knew that they had left. In addition, the 4th Regiment was left behind to guard the pier. From the outside, it didn't look any different from before. On the sea, a total of 3 Class 5 warships were heading towards Fuzhou from Crimson City. At the harbor built by the Yang faction in Fuzhou, Chao Jixiang, dressed in casual clothes, walked into a medium-sized ship. The embroidered uniform guards, who had long since taken control of everything on the ship, also set sail, heading towards Crimson City. Behind their ship, 2 ships that looked like fishing boats were tailing them. Relying on the high-powered binoculars in his hand, he seemed to be hanging several miles behind them. Because the distance was too far, it did not attract Chao Jixiang's attention. Or rather, Chao Jixiang's attention wasn't on his side at all. Ever since he entered the cabin, he had been looking at the radio in front of him. An intelligence agent sent by Yang Lu was fiddling with it. He knew nothing about radio stations. He only knew that it was very powerful and could transmit information from thousands of miles away. Chao Jixiang, who was sighing at the miraculous nature of this item, was waiting for the fish to take the bait. As for safety, he was not worried. Yang Lu had arranged everything. As for whether or not he would be cheated, he was carrying the imperial edict personally written by Zhu Qizhen of the Ying sect. It was about Yang Lu succeeding Yang Chendong and becoming the Bugnam of Gojoseon. Presumably, there were people who were more anxious than him. If Yang Chendong didn't die, Yang Lu wouldn't be able to ascend the throne. Right, Yang Lu now had another name, Yang Shunming. This meant that he was willing to submit to the great Ming dynasty. It could be seen that in order to ascend the throne, Yang Lu was really going all out. As for whether or not Yang Lu would lie to him, it was basically impossible. He wouldn't tell such a big lie just to deal with her, would he? Furthermore, he even asked Yang Chendong to cooperate with him. Did he really think that he had an important identity? Eunuchs, in the end, weren't even considered complete people. They were even looked down upon by many people. Even if some people tried to curry favor with them, it was only because of the emperor's face. If they really left the emperor's favor, eunuchs wouldn't even be worth a fart. Chao Jixiang was waiting for news. Yang Chendong's level 5 warship was also heading towards the predetermined location. The level 5 warship's speed wasn't slow. It braved the wind and waves all the way, quickly approaching the destination. It was only 180 kilometers in a straight line. In the future, it would only take 80 minutes to reach the destination. It was impossible to be so fast now. However, it would only take 10 hours to reach the destination. Not to mention, the destination wasn't Fuzhou, but the sea outside of Fuzhou. Therefore, in just 8 hours, Yang Chendong and the rest arrived at the predetermined sea area. During the journey, Yang Chendong sat in the main cabin and was playing Go with Yang, Ba Daojiang, and the rest were watching and learning from the side. It was precisely because Yang Chendong loved Go that the few servants around him were not bad at Go. Even Beta Persei, that big brute, was quite accomplished in Go. There was no need to talk about Yang Lu. He had more time than Beta Persei and studied Go more deeply. At this moment, he was watching the game from the side. Yang Chendong's Go skills were also not bad. After coming to the southern Ming dynasty, he had looked for others to specially learn from him. However, when facing Yang Chendong, he still felt a lot of pressure. After all, after having Datsang, Yang Chendong had already changed. He learned everything quickly and was more proficient in it. Compared to the game of Go in the main cabin, outside the cabin, Yang Ying was talking to Battalion Commander Wang Nanhu. Battalion Commander Wang, we are about to reach our destination. In a while, everything will be done according to my instructions. Understand? Yes. Yang Lu had already introduced Yang Ying to Wang Nanhu and told him to listen to this person's orders. Therefore, at this moment, Battalion Commander Wang did not know what was going to happen next. He also did not know that he was now helping someone to deal with Bugnam of Gojoseon. All right, bring your men to the bow of the ship to check. Leave the safety of this place to our men, Yang Ing said, casually. Yes. Wang Nanhu replied again, and turned around to take away the 33 soldiers guarding here. It was a full platoon of cold front soldiers. When he came, he knew that Yang Lu had arranged for other people to board the ship to take care of Bugnam of Gojoseon's safety. He also saw that they were wearing the Navy's cold front uniform. Because everything was arranged by Yang Lu, he did not ask any questions. There is a military rule in Yang Xie's army. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. But Wang Nanhu did not know that these 33 cold front soldiers were not sent to protect Bugnam of Gojoseon, but to harm Bugnam of Gojoseon. They have been missing for a long time, and even Yang Xie's intelligence department could not find them. Among the 33 people, the leader was Kitamura and Yui Suzuki, followed by a group of Jonin and Chunin. In order to prevent being discovered by others, they deliberately put something in their shoes to make them look as tall as Han people. What happened outside, the Black Cavalry did not know, because not long after they boarded the ship, Yang Qindong strictly ordered the Black Cavalry to stay in the main cabin with him. This order was given in front of Yang Lu, and he also explained that the cold front soldiers should also be trained. So far, the 30 Black Cavalry soldiers on the main ship did not go out, which made it convenient for Yang Ing to do all the things outside. Yang Lu intentionally stayed in the main cabin to calm Yang Qindong's heart. He didn't make any small movements, and was also monitoring the words and actions of the other Black Knight Dragon Guards. A total of 3 battleships came, but most of the Black Cavalry soldiers and Cold Front soldiers were arranged in the other 2 battleships. Now there are only 30 Black Cavalry soldiers and a platoon of 33 Cold Front soldiers, led by Commander Wang Nanhu on the main ship. In contrast, Yang Lu arranged a total of 100 ninjas on the main ship. Just in terms of numbers, Yang Lu already has the advantage. The cautious Yang Lu did not act immediately. He knew the strength of the Black Cavalry, and the Cold Front soldiers were just temporarily kept in the dark. Once they know what happened, they will immediately become his opponents. Without full confidence, he will not act immediately. Yang Qindong seemed to be completely unaware of what was happening outside. He was still playing Go with his 4th brother, Yang Yang. In the end, he won 3 games. This is already giving a lot of face to his 4th brother. Yang Yang also knew what was going on. He couldn't help but laugh. 6th brother, your 4th brother is not your opponent. You are still the best. Haha, 4th brother, you're too modest. If you weren't so impatient, we might have won this game. Yang Qindong seemed to be talking about the chessboard, but it also seemed like he was pointing out something in a roundabout way. When these words fell into Yang Qindong's ears, he didn't know why, but his face tightened. He always felt that Yang Qindong's words were pointing at something. Fortunately, at this time, Yang Ing walked into the main cabin and said, "Your Majesty, Chao Jixiang's ship has arrived." "Oh, he's here? Haha, that's great." Yang Yang got up very happily. For him, being able to instigate the defection of such an important person like Chao Jixiang was naturally a great achievement. He could finally use practical actions to get rid of his status as Yang Qindong's 4th brother. For him to be where he was today, he also had real ability. "Yang Lu Badeojiang, you go out and take a look." Yang Qindong didn't get up. With his current status, perhaps if Zhu Qizhen came, he would only go out and welcome him. After all, it was just a eunuch. It was really nothing. Yang Lu and Badeojiang nodded in unison, then went out of the main cabin with Yang Yang. As expected, they saw a small boat sailing over. In the distance, Chao Jixiang, who was wearing clothes embroidered with fierce dragons, appeared in front of them under the protection of more than 10 imperial guards with embroidered spring sabers at their waists. That's right, it is Master Chow. When he saw the person, Yang Yang's smile grew wider. Although Badeo Jiang had never seen the real person, he had seen many portraits in the past. In addition, Yang Yang had verified the identity of the other party, so of course he didn't suspect anything. He nodded, then turned to enter the cabin and said, "Sixth young master, it is Chao Jixiang. Let's go on board to discuss." Yang Chendong nodded. His expression didn't change at all. But if one looked carefully, one would be able to see that he seemed to have sighed softly, but no one knew what it was. That was a pity. Chapter 1649. A spiral staircase was set up on the ship to guide Chao Jixiang and the others onto the ship. The moment their bodies crossed, Chao Jixiang's gaze landed on Yang Lu. When he saw Yang Lu nod casually, a smile appeared on his face, and he seemed to straighten his back even more. With a total of 12 embroidered uniform guards, Chao Jixiang boarded the Yang family's 5th-grade warship under the protection of Wen Jing's command. Before entering the main cabin, he was stopped by Ba Daojiang and searched. Chao Jixiang was very cooperative with all this. He didn't bring any weapons with him. He probably knew that he wouldn't have a chance to assassinate Bugnam of Gojoseon, even if he had a weapon. In the main cabin, Yang Chendong sat there unhurriedly, drinking tea. Yang Chendong excitedly led Chao Jixiang into the cabin. When he saw Yang Chendong, Chao Jixiang hurriedly bowed, respectfully. "This servant greets His Highness Bugnam of Gojoseon." "Ha, Mr. Chao. I trust you have been well since we last met." Yang Chendong raised his head with a smile on his face. The two of them had crossed paths when they were in Ming. At that time, Yang Chendong was a head above Yang Chendong. Now that so many years had passed, he was still a head above Yang Chendong. Chao Jixiang couldn't help but blush when he heard Yang Chendong's words. However, when he thought about how Yang Chendong might become his prisoner, he could step on Yang Chendong's head and do whatever he wanted. He suppressed his embarrassment and said respectfully, "Bugnam of Gojoseon is wise and mighty. How can this servant compare to you? If there was a eunuch's greatest skill, it would be flattery. As long as you wanted to hear it, you would listen to it. Otherwise, how could you make the emperor happy and entrust them with important tasks?" Yang Chendong, who already knew this, didn't believe Chao Jixiang's words at all. Thus, his expression didn't change as he said, "All right, don't show your tricks in front of this prince. Let's get down to business." "Yes, His Highness Bugnam of Gojoseon," Chao Jixiang replied, and stood there with a bitter expression. Chao Jixiang originally wanted to sit down and speak, but Yang Chendong didn't say anything. Naturally, he didn't dare to overstep his boundaries. At this time, he could only stand and speak his request. Among them, he emphasized how his brothers from the embroidered uniform guards would be placed if they joined Yang Xie. It could be seen that Chao Jixiang was well prepared. After he spoke, he didn't have any intention of stopping. He spoke one sentence after another, quickly attracting everyone's attention. At this time, no one noticed that Yang Lu had already left the main cabin. He looked at Yang Ying standing outside and nodded lightly. Then, he returned to the main cabin as if nothing had happened. After receiving the signal, Yang Ying immediately waved at Bei Muraku and Yu Suzuki, who were standing outside the main cabin. The two figures quickly left, after a dozen breaths of time. A fragrance drifted with the wind and enveloped the Class 5 warship. All of this was done unknowingly without attracting anyone's attention. In the main cabin, Chao Jixiang hurriedly spoke for nearly half an hour. Finally, he said, "All embroidered uniform guards will replace the black cavalry and be responsible for Bugnam of Gojoseon's safety." Bugnam of Gojoseon will be under the protection of our embroidered uniform guards and head to Ming to ask for forgiveness from the emperor. Everything was fine before, and Chao Jixiang's attitude was also very humble. However, all of a sudden, the topic changed, causing everyone to be shocked. Especially Yang, who was the middleman. His expression changed greatly. He looked at Chao Jixiang and said, "Master Chao, what are you talking about? Are you crazy?" "Crazy? Ha ha ha, you're the ones who are crazy. As subjects of the great Ming dynasty, you don't want to serve the emperor. You actually want to rebel and change the dynasty. You need to have the ability to do so. Now that I am here, you should quickly surrender without a fight." Chao Jixiang's previous submissive attitude was replaced by a maniacal laugh. "You're courting death." Ba Daojiang saw that someone was being impudent in front of the sixth young master. How could he let it go? He immediately reached for his waist and pulled out his blade. Then a loud bang sounded, causing everyone in the main cabin to be shocked. For some reason, Ba Daojiang fell to the ground. His entire body was as soft as noodles. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't muster up any strength. The sudden change caused the other black cavalry soldiers to turn pale with fright. They immediately pulled out their blades. As they exerted their strength, the figures fell to the ground one by one. Needless to say, the situation at this moment was no different from Ba Daojiang's. "What's going on? Guards, come and protect the emperor." Everything in front of him shocked Yang. When he came back to his senses, he immediately shouted. Then, the sound of footsteps came from outside the main cabin. Battalion Commander Wang Nanhu led a platoon of black cavalry soldiers and rushed over after hearing the shout. When they rushed to the door of the main cabin, because they used too much strength, they couldn't stop in time and crashed into each other. More than 30 people fell to the ground. Even the 95 style in their hands were thrown to the ground. No one had the strength to hold a firearm in their hands. The black cavalry soldiers were hit, and so were the cold vanguard soldiers. Everything happened so suddenly that Yang reached for his waist in shock. But when he exerted his strength, he felt dizzy. He felt as if all the strength in his body had been sucked out, and he fell to the ground with a thump. Everyone who made a move fell to the ground at this moment, unable to get up. On the contrary, Yang Lu and Chao Jixiang, who had been standing there without moving, were fine. They just looked at everything coldly. The sound of footsteps came again, and another group of people rushed in from outside the main cabin. Unlike Ba Daojiang and Wang Nanhu, these people didn't lose their strength. Yang Ing, who was at the front of the pack, was holding a porcelain bottle in his hand. He was the first to arrive before Yang Lu. "Master, this is the antidote for the bone-softening powder. Take it quickly," he said to Yang Lu with a fawning expression, and poured out a small black pill from the porcelain bottle. "Okay, give Chao Jixiang one too." Yang Lu took the pill and swallowed it, and spoke to Chao Jixiang in a fawning manner, just like how Yang Ing spoke to him. Yang, Ba Daojiang, Wang Nanhu, and the others clearly saw what was happening in front of them. In exchange, they were shocked. After some time, Yang, who was lying on the ground, finally opened his mouth and said, "Yang Lu, you slave, what are you doing? Do you know what you are doing?" "Of course I know. I am doing my duty as a subject. I am pledging my loyalty to the great Ming dynasty's emperor." At this moment, Yang Lu was like a ferocious tiger that bared its fangs, and he roared at Yang. With this shout, Yang was stunned. He couldn't accept this. Even if he was lying on the ground and couldn't move, he still felt like he was in a dream. It wasn't just Yang who couldn't understand. Ba Daojiang, the black cavalry, Wang Nanhu, and the cold spear warriors couldn't understand either. Was this still Bugnam of Gojoseon's most trusted servant? What was he trying to do? Didn't he know that this was equivalent to betraying Bugnam of Gojosian? This was an act of killing one's master. For a moment, everyone's first reaction was to quickly look at Yang Chendong, who had been sitting there motionless all this time. The trust they had for a long time made them place all their hopes on the king. Not only Ba Daojiang and the others, but even Chao Jixiang and Yang Lu also looked at Yang Chendong. They wanted to see what this person could do in the face of such a hopeless situation. Other than becoming a prisoner, what else could he do? Sigh. With a long sigh, Yang Chendong didn't let everyone down. He finally opened his mouth. With a sigh, Yang Chendong slowly raised his head. His face was very calm, and he still had the appearance of having the pearl of wisdom in his hand. He was not as surprised as Yang and the others. Instead, he slowly opened his mouth and spat out 3 words. Why? This question was obviously directed at Yang Lu. He was asking why Yang Lu betrayed him. Facing Yang Chendong's deep gaze, Yang Lu didn't know why, but he actually felt a little nervous. His heart started to beat faster, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. This was the power of a dying tiger. Master. Yang Ying hurriedly stepped forward and supported Yang Lu, who was retreating. At this moment, Yang Lu felt that his performance just now was very embarrassing. But who could be blamed for this? For many years, he had been following Yang Chendong blindly. He had always been a servant. Now that he was suddenly going to be the master, he needed some time to adapt. Yang Lu, who had regained his footing, no longer looked at Yang Chendong's threatening gaze. Instead, he shouted as if he was venting his anger. Why? You still have the nerve to ask me? We are all servants, but Beta Persei is valued and is by your side every day. Yang Sangui is the director of the Security Bureau and has great power. Yang Si is the logistics minister and has great power. Even Yang Wu is your spokesperson in Qiqian City. No one dares to look down on you and has to curry favor with you. But what about me? With another loud shout, Yang Lu continued to vent his anger. I only married a few concubines and received some monetary gifts, but I was scolded by you in front of everyone. Then you threw me to the southern Ming kingdom and didn't care about me. Yang is suppressing my power, and Yang San is watching my every move. Most of the time, no one listens to what I say. We are all servants, and we all work for the Yang family. Why is there such a difference in treatment? May I ask, if I don't rebel against you, do I have any other choice? Chapter 1650. Under the loud roar, Yang Lu seemed to feel better. He then said, I know that you must think that I am useless, but that is only because you have not seen my ability. Now, the Southern Ming Emperor thinks highly of me and is willing to make me the new Bugnam of Gojosian. As the saying goes, a gentleman will die for his friends. If you were me, what would you do? This sentence was not only directed at Yang Chendong, but also at Yang and the others. It was as if he was trying to absolve himself. When a person chose the path of betrayal, it was impossible to say that his heart did not suffer. Thus, they needed to find a reasonable excuse for themselves. This way, their conscience would at least feel better. Yang Lu was currently looking for an excuse for himself. Moreover, he was saying it in a dignified manner. As for whether or not he could convince others, he did not know. However, after saying this, his heart felt much better. After Yang Lu shouted, Chao Jixiang immediately said, That's right. Yang Shunming abandoned the dark for the light and placed righteousness before family. He is a model of a loyal official. For this, the emperor has already issued an imperial edict. He ordered us to capture the traitor Yang Chendong and appoint him as the new Bugnam of Gojosian to command all matters big and small in Yangxia. Using this opportunity, a golden imperial edict appeared in Chao Jixiang's right hand. He took it out and read in front of everyone, "By the will of the heavens, the emperor decrees." The following content was exactly what Chao Jixiang had said. At this moment, Yang Ba Daojiang and the black cavalry all looked at Yang Lu, who was kneeling on the ground to receive the imperial edict, with eyes that could kill. It is still the same sentence. If looks could kill, Yang Lu would have been cut into pieces. Minister Yang Shunming thanks the emperor for his grace. Long live the emperor. After Chao Jixiang finished reading, Yang Lu stretched out his hands to receive the imperial edict. Then he kowtowed 3 times to the ground. At this moment, he vividly displayed the image of a servant. "Bugnam of Gojoseon, please rise." Chao Jixiang quickly helped Yang Lu up with both hands. "Many thanks, Mr. Chao." Yang Lu also repeatedly expressed his gratitude. The two of them displayed an expression of mutual appreciation. "Good. Congratulations, master. Congratulations, master." Yang Ying, who was standing at the side, also began to flatter Lin Fan. As Yang Luqing worked for Bugnam of Gojoseon, it was obvious that his status would rise as well. By then, he would be able to do whatever he wanted in Yangxia. In the face of Yang Ying's congratulations, Yang Lu was naturally overjoyed and in high spirits. Just now, he had said a few words to express his excitement. A voice suddenly interrupted him. "How unexpected. Even the name has been changed. Yang Shunming, he not bad. Looks like you're really made to be a servant." Needless to say, only Yang Chendong could make such a sound. If it was in the past, Yang Lu would have been scared out of his wits when he heard this voice. However, at this moment, with the imperial edict in his hand, it was as if he had really become Bugnam of Gojoseon. At this moment, there was not the slightest bit of fear. On the contrary, when he looked at Yang Chendong, who was seated there, he coldly snorted and said, "You're just a defeated general. Do you have any objections?" Let's not talk about whether I have any objections. However, have you ever thought that with just one imperial edict from Zhu Qizhen, do you think the officials of Yangxia will recognize it and agree to it? Yang Chendong retorted sarcastically. "That's right. What you've done is shameful to all the people of the Yang clan. Just you wait. It won't be long before someone comes to take your head. You'll die without a burial ground." Jiang Baoqiang roared with all his might. Seeing that someone still dared to threaten him at this time, Yang Lu couldn't help but laugh loudly. He didn't seem to be angry at all. It was clear that he had already considered this matter. With a wave of his hand, Yang Ying received a radio from the ninja beside him and respectfully handed it to Yang Lu. After receiving the radio, Yang Lu skillfully turned it on and then began to broadcast the contents of the telegram in front of everyone. As he spoke, he also narrated the contents of the telegram. "Yang Chendong has already been captured by the Southern Ming's embroidered uniform guards outside of Fuzhou Harbor. Anyone who receives this telegram is to submit a form of surrender to the Southern Ming Empire within 3 to 30 days. This way, you and your family will be safe. The emperor feels that everyone is working hard for the glory of the great Ming Empire and has only been deceived by vile people. Those who surrender are allowed to bring all their family assets and move to the capital of the Southern Ming Empire. Those who do not surrender within the time limit will be regarded as traitors of the Southern Ming Empire and can be killed by anyone. At the same time, Yang Chendong, Ding Lu of the family of the guilty official Yang Chendong, will be appointed as the new Bugnam of Gojoseon, commanding all of the troops under Yangxia. In the 34th year of the Orthodox dynasty, Zhu Qizhen of the Ying sect." After speaking, Yang Lu, who had also finished sending the telegram, turned off the radio and laughed heartily. "How is it? This telegram has already been sent, and can be received by anyone who has a telegram. Do you think that after such a thing has happened, there will still be people coming to find trouble with this prince? Every unit's radio had their own communication codes, but once a telegram was sent, even the Yangtze's department or the army could receive it. It was easy to imagine what kind of chaos this telegram would cause after it was sent out. This was equivalent to the great Ming Empire's soldiers running to various cities and shouting that the emperor had been captured by the enemy. After the telegram was sent out, Yang, Badeo Jiang, and the others were naturally infuriated. They hated the fact that they were powerless right now and couldn't do anything even if they wanted to. At this time, on another Level 5 battleship, not far away, telecommunications director Wang Shan also received the telegram. Although Wang Shan was allowed to follow Yang Qindong for safety reasons, he didn't board the main ship. Wang Shan also knew that this was the biggest concession the sixth young master could make. Considering that staying on another ship would ensure his safety and control of the situation, he agreed. Now that he saw the telegram, his expression changed greatly, and he instinctively wanted to reply with a coded telegram to explain everything. However, considering Yang Qindong's previous orders, he could only suppress this thought and send out a few secret telegrams. On the main ship, Yang Lu? No. Yang Shunming was looking at Yang Qindong with a smug expression. He was looking forward to seeing his former master's panicked expression. It would definitely give him a great sense of satisfaction. Unfortunately, he was destined to be disappointed. This was because Yang Qindong's expression didn't change at all. Instead, he looked at Yang Lu as if he was looking at a clown. What? Is this all you've got? Isn't this enough? Yang Shunming instinctively asked. Do you think you can overturn the heavens when you're here? Come on, you can come in. Following Yang Lu's shout, Kitamura and Yui Suzuki in their Marine Cold Front uniform led a few Jonins into the main ship. Bugnam of Gojoseon, how have you been? Do you still recognize us? Clown, you're just a loser. Yang Qindong's expression didn't change at all. Instead, it was filled with disdain, as if he was already prepared for the appearance of these two special Jonins. Yang Qindong's expression didn't change, which greatly disappointed Yang Shunming. This was completely different from what he expected. He couldn't help but shout. What? At this time, you still want to be stubborn? You still want to act all high and mighty? Who are you trying to fool? That's right, you're already a prisoner. If you immediately kneel and beg my master, you might be able to suffer less. When Yang Ying saw that Yang Shunming was angry, he took half a step forward and said in a threatening manner, Oh, what do you think I am? Oh, right, you're the Uncle Ying that Mo Gue mentioned, right? Ha! I really underestimated you. To think that Yang Lu could get to where he is today, you must have contributed a lot, right? Let me guess, you shouldn't be as simple as Yang Lu's butler. If I'm not wrong, you should be a lackey of the Imperial Secret Service. Your real master should be this Chao Changgong, right? Seeing Yang Ying jump out, Yang Qindong's voice was still filled with disdain. Yang Ying's expression changed constantly as Yang Qindong's words. He didn't expect that this Bugnam of Gojoseon was so powerful that he actually knew his background. However, he didn't know if there was real evidence or if it was just a casual remark. But no matter what the reason was, he couldn't let him go on. Yang Ying immediately shouted, interrupting Yang Qindong's words. What's wrong? At this time, you still want to drive a wedge between us? That's right, he's just spouting nonsense. Brother Yang, let's not talk nonsense with him. Let's cripple him first. Chao Jixiang couldn't bear it anymore. Some secrets couldn't be made public. Otherwise, it would affect his future plans. Shut up, Yang Shunming shouted, interrupting Chao Jixiang and Yang Qindong's words. He looked carefully at Yang Qindong and asked, How do you know all this? Ha! Not only do I know all this, but I also know that once something happens to me, Yang Xie will become chaotic. When he is no longer as strong as before, they will make a move on you. After all, you are a chess piece. Of course, you will be thrown away. Yang Chendong laughed. This Yang Lu was really stupid. He thought that he could control his own fate, but he didn't know that he was just a puppet that had become another puppet. If Yang Chendong could think of this, Yang Lu naturally knew as well. At this moment, he realized that his own fate was never in his control. He couldn't help but turn around and stare fiercely at Yang Ying. When he noticed the murderous look in Yang Lu's eyes, Yang Ying couldn't help but take 2 steps back. With a nervous expression, he said, "Master, I am already loyal to you. Don't listen to the instigation of this lowly person." Haha, loyal? How was the previous Yang Lu disloyal in front of this prince? Yang Chendong added in a timely manner. This also made Yang Lu, who was soft-hearted, harden his heart. "Kitamura, please help me kill him. Don't worry, your country's Princess Junko will be fine. I will definitely rescue her and send her to you." Chapter 1651. Don't! Yang Ying sensed that something was amiss. His expression changed drastically, and he instinctively wanted to dodge to the side. However, a blade flashed, and he realized that he could see his buttocks. Then, Yang Ying, whose head had been chopped off, fell to the ground. He was as dead as a doornail. "Not bad. You're ruthless." Looking at Yang Lu's performance, Yang Chendong praised him. After dealing with Yang Ying, Yang Lu turned to look at Chao Jixiang. Chao Jixiang's face was pale. He was clearly frightened. "Chao Jixiang, I hope this is an accident. I hope there will be a next time." Yang Lu thought for a while and decided not to act. After all, he couldn't leave the support of the Southern Ming Empire. Naturally, he couldn't just kill Chao Jixiang. Chao Jixiang, whose expression had changed drastically and even wanted to shout for Wen Jing to rush in, could not help but let out a long sigh of relief. He knew that this was not because the other party had let go of his plot against him, but because no one could leave each other now. He said gratefully, "Thank you for not killing me, Your Majesty." Chao Jixiang's attitude made Yang Lu very satisfied. He nodded his head lightly and accepted this gratitude. Then he turned his gaze and looked at Yang Chendong, who was sitting there. Yang Chendong didn't even move a finger. With just a few words, he killed his most trusted butler. It had to be said that just thinking about this method alone was enough to make one feel shocked. It was precisely because of this that this person absolutely could not be left alive, although for the sake of the greater cause. He would not go so far as to kill the other party, but he still had to capture the other party alive and control him. "Kitamura, Suzuki-kun, do it!" The 2 special ninjas, who had been waiting for a long time, nodded at the same time and walked to Yang Chendong. This scene made Badeo, Yang Yang, Wang Nanhu, and the rest anxious. However, they were poisoned by the bone-softening powder and couldn't use their strength. There was nothing they could do. Wait! At this critical moment, a voice rang out. Although it wasn't loud, it caused the 2 ninjas to stop. Only Yang Chendong could cause such trauma to Kitamura and Yu Suzuki. The words "wait a minute" had also come from his mouth. As soon as he spoke, Yang Chendong raised his head and looked at Yang Lu. "What's wrong? Was it that urgent? Or are you afraid of me from the bottom of your heart?" "Afraid of you? Why should I be afraid of you? Don't you know that you're the meat on my chopping block?" Although Yang Lu was very afraid of Yang Chendong in his heart, and this was a habit that had been cultivated over the years, he still stiffened his neck and said these words. "Since you're not afraid, let's just talk about it. Otherwise, I'm afraid we won't have a chance to talk in the future." Yang Chendong said unhurriedly, However, the more he acted like this, the more he could emit a calming aura that affected the people around him, causing them to not dare to act recklessly. Say what? Yang Lu was still reluctant to admit his mistake. Let's talk about Mo Gai. Oh, by the way, there's also the radio station with serial number 9826. Yang Chendong squinted his eyes. When he talked about this, there was even a slight smile at the corner of his mouth. Other than Yang Chendong, no one else knew that it was the radio station that Mo Gui thought was abandoned that attracted Yang Chendong's initial suspicion of Yang Lu. Every radio station had its own unique code, and people who didn't pay much attention to it wouldn't pay much attention to it. Yang Chendong didn't mention this to anyone else. He only intentionally recorded the code when he distributed the radio stations. At first, it was just to identify people by the station and the code. However, he didn't expect that this code would actually help him find the traitor. Yang Lu didn't know about this, and when he heard Yang Chendong mention the code 9826, he was still confused. What do you mean? Looking at Yang Lu's confused expression, Yang Chendong laughed. You've been with me for so many years, but you haven't learned much. All right, then I'll tell you. Every radio station has its own unique code, and Mo Gui's code was 9826. When I brought people to attack the 3 provinces, Mo Gui saw that he had no chance of winning, so he committed suicide and buried the radio station. What he didn't know was that even though he destroyed 80% of the radio station, the code was still clear. So, Yang Chendong deliberately dragged out his words, and as expected, Yang Lu's expression changed. He exclaimed, "So, you secretly investigated this radio station, and found out that it was me?" "That's right." Yang Chendong looked at Yang Lu approvingly. "You're not that stupid, you just learned about it a little late. It was through this code that we found out that this radio station was allocated to Director White Fox of the CIA stationed in Nanming. However, that White Fox had already been bribed by you. She is now your mistress and is working for you. I have to say, you're very careful. In order not to reveal any flaws, you didn't find an excuse to apply for a new radio station. Instead, you borrowed White Fox's radio station and gave it to Mo Gui. You and White Fox are sharing a radio station, right?" Listening to Yang Chendong's analysis, even though it was January 1468 and the weather was a little cold at sea, Yang Lu still broke out in a cold sweat. He was indeed very careful. In order not to attract attention, he dismissed Yang Ying's idea of finding an excuse to get a new radio station. Instead, after discussing with White Fox, he gave her radio station to Mo Gui. This way, he didn't have to worry about being exposed and people suspecting him, so he could lay out his plans. What he didn't expect was that there was a unique code on the radio station. Damn it, why didn't he check it carefully before? He had seen the code before, but he didn't think much of it. In the future, it would be the same on every radio station. However, he didn't know that it was his carelessness that exposed him. If he was exposed at that time, would he have already attracted Yang Chendong's attention? Could it be that the other party had seen everything that he had done? If that was the case, didn't that mean that everything he did was within his expectations? No, that's impossible. Another voice shouted in his mind. If that was the case, how could Yang Chendong get involved? How could he take the risk? He was now Bognam of Gojoseon. He had more territory and people than the great Ming dynasty's emperor. How could he jump into a trap knowing that it was a trap? At least, if he had that position, he definitely wouldn't take the risk. In his mind, Yang Lu, whose thoughts were flying, couldn't understand. At this time, Yang Chendong spoke again. After finding out that it was the radio station that White Fox used, they naturally found you. This also explains why White Fox's radio station was no longer in her hands, but she could still receive news from the CIA headquarters. However, this prince didn't touch her because this prince wanted to see what you wanted to do and what you would do next. Thus, you sent ninjas to assassinate Yang Yang and then came out to play the hero to save people. This gave you a legitimate excuse to enter Kaohsiung City, right? These words struck Yang Lu's head like a bolt of lightning, causing the cold sweat on his neck to continuously flow out. Yang Qindong continued. After returning to Kaohsiung City, you immediately tried to rope in Yang Wu. You didn't even hesitate to give a woman named Cui Xiu to him. You even made Cui Xiu the steward of the 8th Madam's womb. You wanted to divert the trouble and make this prince think that the assassination of 4th brother was ordered by the 8th Madam. This prince was naturally aware of this, but I was curious about what else you wanted to do, so I didn't expose you and continued to watch you act. Speaking of which, you are indeed ruthless. Seeing that Yang Wu didn't fall for your trap and wouldn't be your spy in the palace and harm this prince, you thought of another way. You used this prince's 4th brother to trick this prince into coming to the sea. You contacted Chao Jixiang, which led to this scene. In order to be able to follow me closely and control the situation at all times, you even sent people to poison your Beta Persei's mother-in-law, causing her to be poisoned and hospitalized so that she wouldn't have the chance to follow this prince out to sea. In this way, you became the best candidate, right? Ha! Yang Qindong laughed, but what you didn't expect was that the maid who served Beta Persei's mother-in-law, Lian, was originally recommended by White Fox. Then why didn't you think about it? Since White Fox was the focus of suspicion, how could the person she recommended not be guarded against? So the so-called poisoning incident was fake. The food provided by Lian had long been swapped. It was just to see what else you wanted to do. So this prince didn't expose all of this. After saying this, the smile on Yang Qindong's face disappeared and was replaced by disappointment and anger. What this prince didn't expect was that you actually wanted to replace me and collude with the Southern Ming Emperor to destroy the Yang Xie's overall situation. To be honest, I can understand how you treat this prince. Whether it's because you're jealous or disappointed that you attacked this prince, it's also a reaction of human nature. But who would have thought that you would be so despicable and want to harm the entire Yang Xie? Do you know how many people died and how much effort we put in to achieve today's situation? Suddenly, Yang Qindong's voice rose several octaves as he shouted, "What's the difference between you and an animal? Do you think you can still be forgiven by doing this?" Yang Lu, who had long been deranged by this analysis, fell to the ground with a plop. Then he said with a terrified expression, "No, this is impossible. You can't know everything. This is impossible." Chapter 1652. If you don't want people to know, then don't do it in the first place. Yang Qindong shook his head and said as he stood up. When Yang Qindong stood up, both Kitamura and Yui Suzuki couldn't help but take a step back. As the saying goes, a person's reputation is like a tree's shadow. Yang Qindong had always brought them great pressure, like a heart demon. It wasn't something that would disappear just because you didn't think about it, and it wasn't something that could be forgotten just because you wanted to. Yang Qindong was already dumbfounded. He didn't know what to do with Yang Qindong's analysis. Chao Jixiang also widened his eyes in shock at these words, but he was still rational. Although he knew that things wouldn't go as smoothly as he thought, at least the Yang Qindong in front of him was real. That was the most important thing. As long as he could control Yang Qindong, then the situation would still be under control. Even if the other party had a backup plan, he wouldn't have the chance to show it. So when he looked at Yang Qindong, his eyes were filled with killing intent. He had to control this person immediately, then he would be in an invincible position. "Where's Wenjing?" Why aren't you going to capture the traitor Yang Qindong? After the shout, when Jing rushed in with a few embroidered uniform guards from outside the main cabin. Then, the embroidered spring saber drew a beautiful circle in the air and went straight for Yang Qindong. There were many rumors that Yang Qindong was not only unparalleled in intelligence, but his personal strength was also unparalleled in the world. Normally, they wouldn't dare to make a move. But now, the fragrance of the bone-softening powder had already taken effect. Yang Qindong was probably a soft-footed prawn, unable to resist. With such confidence, one of the embroidered uniform guards swung his saber. But it was obvious that he didn't use his full strength, and the way he attacked wasn't the kind that would take a life. His target was the neck, and he wanted to knock him out. Scram! With a harsh shout, Yang Qindong stretched out his leg and struck the imperial bodyguard's chest. Under the powerful kick, it directly hit the person's chest. Immediately, the sound of bones cracking rang out, and the embroidered uniform guard's chest naturally caved in. How is this possible? The embroidered uniform guard, who had charged forward quickly but retreated even faster, landed beside Chao Jixiang. Seeing the blood bubbling out of the corners of his mouth, it was obvious that he was breathing in more than he was breathing out. Everyone in the room was so shocked that their eyes widened. Shouldn't he have been poisoned by the bone-softening powder? But why was nothing wrong with him? No one knew that Yang Qindong's biggest secret was in the big warehouse. It was just a bone-softening powder. When he felt it, it was led into the big warehouse and completely digested. How could it be a threat to him? It was because of the big warehouse that Yang Qindong dared to enter the tiger's den with a fearless face. The reason why he didn't make a move immediately was because he was waiting for the Wolf Fang Special Forces to make a move. After all, he wasn't the only one on the ship. There were also fourth brother Yang Yang, Badeo Jiang, and the other black cavalry, as well as the brothers from the Navy's cold front. And just when Yang Qindong kicked an embroidered uniform guard to death, there were sounds of fighting outside the main cabin. Needless to say, the Wolf Fang Special Forces had arrived. They had followed Chao Jixiang all the way from the Fuzhou Pier. In order to let Yang Qindong boldly carry out his plan, Yang Qindong didn't ask where exactly he would meet Chao Jixiang. He only knew that it wasn't far from the Fuzhou Pier. From this information, the Wolf Fang Special Forces analyzed that Chao Jixiang would depart from the pier and follow him all the way. It was indeed correct. There were already sounds of fighting outside. Knowing that things weren't going well, Chao Jixiang's face changed as he urged Wen Jin and the others to make a move. At the same time, he pulled the frightened Yang Qindong and said, "There's no time. You must let your ninjas make a move immediately. If we can't control Yang Qindong, we will all die here." "Yes, let's do it now." Yang Lu seemed to have come back to his senses as he shouted at Kitamura and the others. Originally, Kitamura and Suzuki didn't think much of Yang Lu. In their eyes, this person was just lucky to follow a good master. However, if they wanted to develop and even revive the small Japanese province and make it independent into a new Japanese empire, they needed financial support. On this point, Yang Lu happened to be able to satisfy them. In addition, they knew very well that if Yang Qindong didn't die, all their ideas would just be a dream. At this moment, they shouted and pounced on Yang Qindong. He had already reached the Grandmaster level. It was quite difficult to hurt him face to face. Although Wen Jin and the other brocade guards had also practiced martial arts since they were young, their methods were not bad. However, when faced with Yang Qindong, it was still not enough. After a few punches and kicks, the brocade guards were all dead on the ground. Even Wen Jin didn't hurt Yang Qindong at all. Instead, the embroidered spring sword in his hand was snatched away, and he was stabbed in the neck. This time, Yang Qindong used 20% of his strength. After the sharp blade cut through, Wen Jin's head and body moved. A headless body fell at Chao Jixiang's feet, scaring him and making him jump and scream. Although it was true that he was the factory manager of the Southern Ming brocade guards and had killed countless people in his hands. However, that was based on the fact that he was strong and the other party was weak. If they were to talk about martial arts, he was just a eunuch. Even a cold warrior could kill him 4 or 5 times. Now that he saw his trusted aide Wen Jin die in front of him, his expression changed drastically. He instinctively jumped behind Yang Lu. In the main cabin, the death of Wen Jin and the others did not end the battle. When Kitamura and Suzuki Wei rushed towards Yang Chendong from left and right, this was the most exciting part. The blades of 2 ninja swords slashed from left and right, carrying a threatening killing intent. Those who didn't have enough eyes could only see the flash of the blades. As expected of special ninja, their foundation was very good, and their strength was not bad. In addition, they didn't have to worry about food and drink in the past few years. As long as they trained wholeheartedly, not only did they recover from their original injuries, but their own strength had also become stronger. Now that the 2 of them were working together, they had a lot of momentum. The blades flashed without the slightest bit of fanciness. The first thing they did was to take a person's life. Obviously, they didn't want to capture Yang Chendong alive at all, but to kill him. The 2 blades slashed from left and right, suddenly changing from a slash to a slash. The change in the path was so fast that Amadeo Jiang and the others who were lying on the ground couldn't help but cry out in alarm. Yang Chendong was already prepared to fight back. Although the attacks of the 2 special ninjas were sharp, they weren't really in his eyes. After all, he was already prepared. What he didn't expect was that the other party would change their moves midway, which made his original preparations useless. Seeing that the blade was about to pass through his body, bringing along a piece of flesh and blood, at the critical moment of life and death, Yang Chendong suddenly turned sideways and at the same time pulled in his abdomen. In the next moment, only a pie sound was heard. The ninja blade had already cut open the green robe in front of his body. Meng Fei's blade was almost close to the skin of his abdomen, and he could even feel the coldness of the blade. At the last moment, Yang Chendong relied on his nimble footwork to dodge this fatal blade. Taking advantage of the moment when Kitamura's attack was about to end, he raised his leg and kicked out. As soon as the kick came out, the wind blew. As the saying goes, one can know the power from the sound. Just from the momentum of this kick, one could tell how powerful it was. Kitamura, who was the target of the attack, felt the immense pressure, and with a cry of surprise, he retreated. On the other side, Suzuki Yui, seeing her brother being threatened, wasn't willing to let it go. She suddenly slashed her blade at Yang Chendong, wanting to force him to save her. This slash was quite ferocious. Perhaps even a wooden stake as thick as a bowl would be sliced in half by it. Facing this blade, Yang Chendong's mouth flashed with disdain. Then his right hand moved forward, and the embroidered spring blade met Yui Suzuki's blade. At the same time, he didn't retract his right leg, and it was still aimed at Kitamura's chest. For a moment, Yang Chendong's body formed up character. His left leg didn't move, and his right leg kicked forward. His entire body leaned back, and the scene looked very beautiful. Clang! The blade collided with the blade, and a crisp sound was heard. When the powerful arm strength was transmitted from the embroidered spring blade to the ninja blade, Yui Suzuki felt her right arm go numb, and she almost gave up her blade and retreated. While forcing Yui Suzuki back, his right leg also landed on Kitamura's chest. However, the opponent had the strength of a special ninja, and his body was abnormally agile. In the end, he still managed to dodge. But even so, The wind from his leg still brushed past Kitamura's chest, tearing his clothes and leaving a bleeding wound on his chest. Just the wind from his leg could cause such damage, making Kitamura and Yui Suzuki speechless. In the past, they only knew that Yang Chendong was very powerful, but no one knew how powerful he was because no one could really force him to use his full strength. But now, they finally had a clear understanding in their hearts. Such an opponent wasn't someone they could deal with. Because they were on a ship, there was nowhere to retreat. Ninjas were indeed powerful, and they could rely on many things and the surrounding environment to hide themselves and achieve a one-hit kill. But this didn't mean that they weren't afraid of water. In this vast sea, once they entered the water without any protection, who knows how long they could last? There was no way out. Although Yang Chendong was very powerful, Kitamura and Yui Suzuki still had to make a move and continued to attack Yang Chendong from left and right. But this time, they were clearly at a disadvantage. Just now, Yang Chendong just wanted to see how strong these two were, so he didn't give them any pressure. Since he saw through these two's methods, how could he give them a chance to perform? Yang Chendong moved. No one saw exactly how he did it. They only saw a figure flash to the side of the north village. Then a sound of la la entered their ears, and the figure disappeared. Chapter 1653. After that, it could be seen that Bei Quanku, who had been kicked by the kick, had a big hole in his chest. His large intestines and small intestines were flowing out from that hole. Even if Bei Quanku tried to block it, he still couldn't stop it. After a successful move, Yang Chendong's gaze turned to Yui Suzuki. At this moment, Yui Suzuki's expression changed greatly. There was only one question in his mind. Why couldn't he see Yang Chendong's figure? It was said that ninjas were the fastest, but now it seemed that the advantage they were most proud of was not as good as the opponent. How could they fight? Just when Yui Suzuki's mind was in a mess, he suddenly felt a pain in his neck, followed by blood splattering everywhere. The ninja sword in his hand fell to the ground, and he instinctively raised his hands to block the wound on his neck. However, he couldn't do it and could only let the blood flow out. In the end, he fell to the ground with a plop and soon died. At this time, the people of Japan were not like the people of the future, who worshipped Amaterasu and were afraid of being beheaded. However, the scene of blood splattering everywhere still brought a strong sense of shock to the onlookers. It made their minds scattered, and there was only fear in their eyes. The two special ninjas fell at the feet of Yang Chendong in just 2 rounds. Whether it was Yang Lu or Chao Jixiang, they realized that they were wrong at this moment. They were very wrong because they didn't know how strong their opponent was. If they wanted to trample him under their feet, they would only be humiliating themselves. After Yang Chendong killed Bei Siyuan, Wen Jing, and the others, he saw that there was no one in the main cabin who could threaten him. He walked to the dead Yang Ying and searched his body. He found the antidote in the porcelain bottle and threw it to Ba Daojiang, who was lying on the ground. When he stood up, the sound of gunfire could be heard from outside the cabin. Needless to say, it was the Wolf Fong Special Forces who were slaughtering. The ninjas outside were not easy to deal with, especially in the dark. Even the Special Forces would have to pay a price if they wanted to take care of him. However, it was daytime, and with firearms in hand, those people were no longer a threat. After Ba Daojiang and the other black cavalry soldiers took the antidote, they immediately felt their strength return. They quickly got up and tied Yang Lu and Chao Jixiang up tightly. Yang stepped forward and punched and kicked Chao Jixiang, causing him to repeatedly beg for mercy. Yang Lu, on the other hand, was very unyielding and did not make a sound. This result was completely out of his expectations. It was originally a flawless plan, but Who would have thought that Yang Chendong would have seen through it long ago? He was just waiting for Yang Chendong to use all his trump cards, and then he would be caught in one fell swoop. Thinking that everything was over, and that it would be difficult for him to even die, Yang Lu could no longer see any hope in life. Even if Yang was kicking him, he didn't seem to feel any pain. Sixth young master, everything outside has been settled. The captain of the Wolf Fang division, Tai Hu, came out of the main cabin with a murderous aura. When he saw Yang Chendong standing there as if nothing had happened, he couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Then he reported the situation outside. Very good. Yang Chendong looked at Tai Hu and smiled. At this moment, the captain of the Wolf Fang division, Skinny Monkey, suddenly walked over with a frightened expression on his face. Sixth young master, things are not good. There are many ships north of us. I don't know if they are coming for us. Not at all, not at all. Yang Lu, who looked like he was about to be captured, suddenly came back to life. He actually broke free from the black cavalry and rushed to the window of the main cabin. When he saw that there were countless black dots in the distant sea, he couldn't help but laugh wildly. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha, got his eyes. Do you see? Do you see? Those are the naval forces of the Japanese Empire. They are coming, they are coming. That's right, those are the naval forces of the Japanese Empire. General Kuroda must have arrived. Unknowingly, Chao Jixiang also squeezed over. Then, the two of them cheered, as if they saw the hope of rebirth. Then, Yang Lu suddenly turned around and looked at the crowd. Do you see? Those are the naval forces of the Japanese Empire. There are 50,000 of them. They are here to capture you. How about this? Let me go immediately, and I can still save your lives. Otherwise what? A mere 50,000 naval forces dare to be arrogant in front of this king? Look carefully. Who else is beside them? Yang Chendong snorted. At this time, Yang Lu still dared to be so arrogant and even dared to threaten him. This made him very angry. After all, being betrayed by the most trusted person, this kind of feeling was hard to accept. When Yang Chendong said this, the others couldn't help but look at the battlefield. Then they noticed that there were more black dots in the periphery of the black dots. Then the sound of cannons sounded. Flames appeared on the distant horizon. That was the reflection of the sinking of the warships. Needless to say, Nie Tong led the Navy's Cold Vanguard Division to attack. They were riding on a level 6 warship. Not only was the warship faster, but it was also equipped with more cannons. It was easy to deal with the 50,000 naval forces that could only fire solid bullets. With a bang, Yang Lu fell to the ground. At this moment, he finally understood that all his plans were within Yang Chendong's calculations. This time, he completely failed. Chao Jixiang was not any better. He sat on the ground with a thump. His face was also ugly. Right now, he was not only worried about his own safety, but also about the negative impact this incident would have on the southern Ming Empire. Bugnam of Gojoseon, Yang Chendong would not let this matter go and attack the southern Ming Empire. Yang Chendong watched as the Japanese ships sunk one after another. His gaze was calm. To be honest, he didn't know that Kuroda, who had escaped for many years, would appear. He instinctively thought that Yang Lu and Chao Jixiang would have other means, so he made the corresponding preparations. He didn't expect that he would hit the jackpot. This was good, as another problem was solved. Yang Chendong didn't need to worry about the distant naval battle. Just like the Army's 1st Cold Vanguard Division was the Army's teaching team, the Navy's 1st Cold Vanguard Division was also the teaching team of the Navy. They were all left behind to protect the safety of Kiosk City. The only difference was that the 1st Cold Vanguard Division had a more important mission, and that was to not allow any ships from other powers to approach Kiosk City's port without permission. They didn't even let him get close to them. How powerful was this naval force? If they couldn't even deal with the Japanese who had already lost their homes, then they might as well retire and go home to raise their children. In a short while, the other two ships had also approached the main ship. Wang Shan led the Black Cavalry and the Cold Vanguard Division onto the main ship. Yang Qindong only glanced at Wang Shan. When he saw the other party nod at him, he knew that the necessary arrangements had been made. He then turned to look at the battalion commander, Wang Nanhu, who was being held down by the Black Cavalry. Speak. What exactly did Yang Lu have on you that made you cooperate with him so much? Your Majesty, I really don't know about Brother Yang Lu. No, Yang Lu will rebel. However, he does have something on me. My real name is Wang Hunan. I was sent to Yangtze by the Southern Ming dynasty in the early days. Wang Nanhu was very straightforward and explained everything that had happened to him from the beginning to the end. Then, he said, everything happened because I didn't recognize people properly. Also, I have a problem with myself. It has nothing to do with my brothers. Please punish me, Your Majesty. I am willing to commit suicide as an apology. Wang Nanhu didn't have any intention of harming Yang Qindong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been drugged by the tendon's powder. However, he had done something wrong and his background wasn't clean. Therefore, Yang Qindong couldn't let him continue to hold an important position. Instead, he said to Yang, detain him first and let the intelligence department investigate him. Also, see if there are any more people like him in the army. The Cold Vanguard Division is our foundation. We can't let anything happen to it. Otherwise, it would be fatal. Yes, Sixth Young Master, Ba Daojiang quickly replied. With a wave of his hand, the Black Cavalry came forward and took Wang Nanhu away. At the same time, in the Southern Ming Dynasty's Yingtianfu district, a group of people was quickly gathering at a small shop selling rouge. When they saw that the shop's door was closed, they didn't stay for long. They quickly climbed over the wall and entered. Judging from their swift movements, they were a well-trained team. In the backyard of the rouge shop, White Fox, the director of the Yangtze CIA station in the Southern Ming Dynasty, was pacing back and forth. She was anxious. This rouge shop was a branch of the CIA. White Fox usually took care of the shop. In reality, she was there to gather information and report back to the CIA headquarters. However, today, White Fox was obviously uneasy. She knew that today was the day Yang Lu would make his move. Whether he succeeded or not, it would all depend on today. Unfortunately, her radio station, the one with serial number 9826, had been borrowed by Yang Lu. Now, she could only wait for news. Thud, thud. Suddenly, a strange sound came from outside the door. It sounded like someone had fallen to the ground. White Fox was capable enough to be the director. When she heard the sound, she immediately shouted, "Who is it? What's going on?" As soon as she finished speaking, the door was pushed open from the outside. A few unfamiliar men walked into the room, forcing White Fox to take a few steps back. This sudden turn of events gave the White Fox a bad feeling. However, she suppressed the panic in her heart and asked loudly, "Who are you people? This is the Yingtianfu district. Aren't you afraid that the authorities will send people to arrest you for trespassing? All right, Director White Fox, you don't have to pretend anymore. You've committed a crime. Come with us now." A figure walked out. White Fox couldn't help but take a few steps back. Naturally, she recognized that the person who spoke was someone she had met before. Although she did not know his name due to confidentiality regulations, this person had always been by Chief Yongsan's side. Now that he was here, it was clear that he was here. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.